I don't have a Santa hat on or a Christmas jumper. I don't have any fairy lights in the background yet. Nothing, no Christmas decorations are up. But I do feel a wee bit like it's Christmas. I feel like it's the right time to start getting ready for Christmas, from a whiskey perspective at least. So I don't have an advent calendar. I haven't had a whiskey advent calendar for a long, long time. So tonight I'm making my own. I'm going to make it along with you. Of course, I'm not going to pour 24 whiskies. Most of the work is already done, but I'll show you all of the whiskies that's in that mix. I'll tell you why I've picked them. There are a theme. You know, you will recognize some of them from me banging my gums throughout the year about them, but there are a few surprises and a few wee special treats in there too. And I'll sip one or two of them along with you tonight. We're going to talk about that to have a bit of fun, and we're also going to talk about money. I'll see you in a second. Hello, whiskey folk. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the vPub. Welcome to Thursday night. Welcome to December, 1st of December. I was listening to the first Christmas carols on the radio today with the kids in the car. Actually quite enjoyed it, much more than I expected. And I think it's because we're becoming a wee bit more respectful and holding off maybe until we hit December. But it's wonderful to welcome you all here, regardless of what time of the year it is, honestly speaking. I think this might be a bit of a soft topic, vPub. And then I got into it. Then I really got into it and I started really enjoying picking out the whiskies that I'm going to build up for my look at my advent calendar here. I mean, it's the preparation that went into this 5 minutes before I hit the go live button, right? See, if I'd thought about it a wee bit longer, actually, I could have made it look a lot more like the Ardbeg warehouse, right? Like a blue version of it. But this is going to end up, we're going to fill this tonight with samples that I've already got prepared. And I'm going to pour a few with you tonight as well. Almost using it as a bit of a tool to summarize the year a little bit for me. It's almost impossible to do that, of course, as there's just so many whiskies. But also try and pick whiskies that you guys have been able to connect with throughout the year, and then add in a few sprinkles of something different, a wee change of pace here and there as well. And also, a wee bit later, I'm going to talk about monetization. There's a few reasons for that, and I'll get onto that later when I start to talk about it. But it's come from questions from you guys, and I realize that there's a lot of people who have been here for a long time that understand it all, and there are a lot of people that are much newer and they don't really understand how I can exist. How can that guy sit there talking about whiskey on YouTube? How does he get paid? Especially if he's keeps talking about independence and not taking things free things and commissions and sponsorships and partnerships and all of these things from industries and affiliates, that kind of thing. How does it all work? How does he exist? So I want to talk about that. I'm not going to dwell on it too heavily, but I will discuss it and hopefully let people understand a wee bit more. But before we get into all of that fun, let's kick off December by jumping in to the lounge and welcoming some of you beautiful whiskey folk and dedicated barflies. Of course, like always, I'm looking for the orange. So if I see you typing Aquavite, I should be able to pick up your comment. Wonderful to have you all. Welcome. Hope you're all comfortable. We've got something in the glass. Chris Brown is saying, spent a lovely evening in the Bòcan this past Monday night. Great selection of drams. Fantastic, Chris. Sorry I never bumped into you there. It's a great wee bar. If you get a cosy seat, you can while away many of an hour in the Bòcan. Glad you enjoyed it, buddy. Hellswood is here. Good to see you, Helen. Karsten, Jimmy Jazz, Max Kreitner, Benny Fries, Drew from Arizona, Bruno Martins, Pete Head, Gabs Drams, Ethan Sterner is saying evening Aquavite and all. Good evening, Ethan. Molasses Mike is saying cheers, Aquavite. It feels good to be back in the vPub after missing last week due to family gatherings. Hey, it was Thanksgiving, Mike, for you last week. Hopefully you had a chance to pick a wee bit of it up on the replay, buddy, but it's wonderful to welcome you back. Nobody needs to attend the vPub, right? It's just like a regular pub. Just like Chris Brown when he's visiting the Bòcan, he can drop in and out as to his whim. That's the whole theme of this this place. There's no responsibilities here. Drew from Arizona is saying, great to see you, Roy. You too, Drew. Wonderful to see you too. I hope you're keeping well. I hope the family is too. Jerry Miller is here saying, good evening, Roy. Good to see you, Jerry. And Graham Fraser is saying, evening, Roy and the Barflies. Justin Wan is saying, thanks for the shout out last week. I'm a married man. Congratulations, Justin. We did give you a wee shout out to say congratulations for your wedding. There's quite a few weddings last week, actually. But I'll raise a wee glass to say cheers. Welcome back. How does it feel? Cheers, Justin. Gordon Fraser is here, saying, good evening, Aquaviti. Hope you're well today. I'm feeling great, Gordon, and I hope you are too, my friend. Whiskey Weekend Dram Harrow saying, I just started with my Advent sample box, trying to cut down the samples in the house. Well, that's one of the ways that you could make an Advent. If you are one of these, like me, who have accumulated far too many samples, just go in and grab 24 samples from your sample stash, put it in a wee separate box and put it to the side and either do a lucky dip type thing. Your significant other can pick it out for you blind, pour it for you blind, and you can play a wee game with it. Anything like that, just to make a bit of a fun out of it. Think about it this month, just doing the Advent thing alone, you could take out 24 of your own wee samples and make a decent dent in your sample collection. For those of you that have less samples, maybe you don't even have 24 bottles to pour an Advent calendar for yourself. Work with what you've got. Make it a dozen, make it half a dozen, make it whatever you want to do. And then once you've done the half a dozen, see how many you got right doing it blind and do another half a dozen and see if you can up your score the next time round. You might be surprised how tricky it is, actually. Helen is saying, good evening, Roy. Good evening to you, Helen. Welcome in. And Whiskey with Molly Ben is saying, evening, Roy. Any Barflies going to Kendal? I know you quite enjoy the Kendal Whiskey Festival, Ben. Is that early December? Is it? It's this month? I don't have plans to go down, but I hope you enjoy it, buddy. You can let me know how you get on with that. There's a dram came in. I don't want to miss that. I've been a wee bit remiss. I missed a dram last week, and when I was doing the comments for last week's video, I caught it, and I felt really bad. So Jim M, apologies, my friend. I did catch your dram in the end. Thanks very much, and apologies that I didn't catch it live. Ian Bose is saying, I'm celebrating 2 years as a Barfly this week, Roy, and my new Barfly badge. I can't always join the live vPub, but it's unfailingly worth it when I do. Cheers, Roy. Ian, thank you so much. You're not only a generous Barfly for the last 2 years, you're buying me a generous dram and saying very generous sports too. A trifecta. Ian, thank you very, very much. And remember, you don't need to worry. Catch it when you can. Cheers, buddy. And another one's come in as well from Adrian Madrigal. Adrian, thank you so much. I'm not sure what currency that is, but he's saying hello. It must be Costa Rica, right? He's saying hello from Costa Rica, just being disqualified from the World Cup. I saw that as well. Listen, but you're not the only ones. There's been a few shock departures at the World Cup, some controversy tonight as well. I was watching it for a wee bit with my son earlier this evening. Very interesting stuff. Sorry to hear that you're out, but at least you got there. I mean, that's what Scotland, I know, would take it just to be there in the finals once more. I will drink a wee dram, he's saying, to improve the mood. Here's to that, Adrian. I'll drink a wee dram alongside you and we can improve our moods together. Cheers, buddy. This is one of the whiskies tonight. This is one of my surprises, one of my interesting picks. And I'll tell you about that in a wee minute. Peter Lee saying, was lovely to see you, and the surprise you gave to Gino Camo was priceless. It's very, very difficult for me right now. When there are Barflies, Patreon folk, viewers, however you want to refer to yourself, we'll talk more about that a wee bit later, coming into Scotland or near me in Glasgow, whatever it may be, even if it's just, who was it? It was Chris Brown, wasn't it? Was talking about being in the Bòcan earlier. I think it was Chris. I used to try very, very hard to nip out and meet up with folk. Families got much more hectic since those days, and the community has become much more hectic. There's no day goes by that there isn't somebody around. So it's tough for me to hook up with people. But when people have travelled from afar, I like to make a wee special effort. And what I was able to do was hook up with Gino and Graham and their families, along with Peter and Denise Lee at Deanston earlier this week. And it was fantastic. Just a short visit, handshakes, a quick sit down and a quick tour. But it was very, very worth it. So here's to Gino, Graham. Here's to you, Peter, as well. Thanks for your hospitality and looking after the Barflies when they're in town too. Peter, Denise, cheers. Also another wee generous dram. Coming in from Chris Brown. I've not bought you a drink for ages, Roy. Slanchi, you don't need to buy me a drink, buddy. You can save it until we're sitting together, and then I get to buy you one back. But Chris, I appreciate it, my friend. Thank you so much. Thank you. And another one from Josh Pench as well. Evening, Roy. Excited to catch a live vPub for the first time in a bit. Fantastic, Josh. Always nice to welcome you here. That's a very cool wee avatar you have, a spectacled dog. Wonderful to have you, buddy. Nice to welcome you in. Cheers, Josh. Fantastic. Hope you're all doing great. Hope you're all settled. I have a precarious amount. I have to be very careful tonight. There are 24 bottles sitting on this wee table next to me. I am not going to pour 24 bottles. I'm certainly not going to taste 24 bottles. I've split them into 6 flights of 4. And I'll pick one dram from each of those 4 flights. I'll pick the last one, the one that I've labeled as interesting, and I'll pour that. I'll pour the sample. Except I need to pick one up from the floor already. These are plastic bottles. I'll grab that in a minute. But I've already labelled them up. I've written on the bottom what they are. And I'm only going to pour the ones that I'm sipping along with you. The rest of them, you can see I've already poured and labelled. So you're not going to be sitting around watching me filling up 24 bottles tonight. But I do have to pour 6 of them. And I do have to pick one up off the floor. These are fantastic wee bottles. These are the ones that Sevi brought along to the blind tasting a couple of weekends ago. And these are so thin, so they can be easily sent to people. They're very light and they're plastic, so they don't break. They've also got a very good seal on them as well. I've had a few filled with liquid and lying on their side and lying upside down to see if they would leak, and they're all bone dry still. So these are fantastic wee sample bottles. I believe them to be food safe. I wouldn't know how long I would want to keep a whiskey spirit in a plastic bottle, but it seems to be okay. Especially high strength, high ABV whiskey. But if you're just kind of shipping it to somebody as a wee online sample share or something like that, they seem to be pretty perfect. So with these 24 precarious bottles, I'm just going to be picking them up, showing you them, talking about them briefly, putting them down again, and we'll do it in 6 chunks of 4. That's how I'm going to cover it tonight. It's going to be kind of rapid. It's going to be a summary of the year. It's going to be a wee bit almost like recycled reviews without the tossing of the bottle and the flipping in the air and things like that. It's just going to be talking about why I've picked it and why I've put it forward into my whiskey advent calendar. It's going to be a big month-long blind challenge for myself. Every night, I'll either come in and grab something blind and pour it, or preferably, I'll ask one of the kids to come in and do it for me, just grab one of them, and then just bring along the bottle with telling me what it is underneath so that I can see if I get it right or not. I'm guaranteed to get 0 out of 24, but it's worth giving it a try, right? Just to play, because when you do get it right, it feels pretty good. And you start to feel like you're getting your head around it and it's not all smoke and mirrors. Falscraft is saying there is a firm for small glass bottles very near me. I can get them cheap in their outlet. That's very good, Falscraft, because in the UK, sample bottles, especially during COVID, I mean, they were like gold dust. But even now, they're difficult to get hold of. And good ones that kind of fit all the requirements, let's say, for a sample bottle, are pretty hard to get a hold of. So I do enjoy these wee plastic ones. So I managed to save 24 from the blind tasting. These are Sevi's sample bottles. I did ask his permission before I used them, and he's graciously said yeah, and he's going to tell me where he gets them from too. If it's a place that's got thousands of them, I will share with everybody where you can pick them up. At some point tonight as well, I'm going to talk about money. I'm going to talk about how I exist. I'm going to talk about a few dynamics that keep this thing going, keep it alive, and why I choose to do it that way, and why one size does not fit all, and why there's no one silver bullet type option to do something like this. One of the reasons I always feel very, very privileged is that I've managed to get myself to a place where if this stays okay, if I don't mess it up, and if you guys keep hanging out with me on a Thursday, it should sustain, it should endure because of the support I have from you guys. I don't earn what I used to earn, but I'm happy, and that's worth a pay cut in a lot of respects. And also, where I used to be capped, I'm not capped here. If I continue to work, there's a chance that, things just continue to grow. So all of these are positive things. I'm not going to dwell. This is not a heavy discussion, but because of comments that's come in, because of the things being exacerbated by the Oswas, because of my own community asking me these questions, I realize that it's been a long time since I've covered it. If we talk about transparency, I'm not going to be fully transparent. I'm not here to tell you what I earn or anything ridiculous like that. But I am going to give you an idea of what it takes and how long it might take for you to find a product that's self-sustaining if you do something like this, whether it's in whiskey or in any field, and let you know where the revenue comes from and what ratio, and let you know how the channel is alive. Peter is saying, I see some discrepancies between the number of attendees and the likes button. Frank, you're always... do you know what's really strange about that? We've got 69 likes right now. Thank you so much. YouTube, it's important for YouTube, and they kind of weave it into the experience and things. YouTube, remember, I'll talk more about the YouTube platform. It's fantastic. It really, really is. Yes, it has its problems. Everything does. But it takes care of all the storage for us. It takes care of all the promotion. It takes care of all the organizing, all the analytics, everything. It actively promotes our content as well and is a superb marketing tool for our content, all for free. In fact, it's better than that. If you do put ads, I don't put ads next to my videos because of the support from the Barflies, more on that later. But if you do put ads next to it, YouTube will give you a cut of the ads. And I think there are not many platforms out there with that model. So we have to remember that. We have to always understand that that's what's happening with YouTube. However, they do rely on those thumbs up because it does tell them that it's worthwhile content. But more important to me, actually, is people coming in to watch and seeing 2,000 views, 3,000 views on a video, and then they look at the likes. And if they see 50 or 60 likes, they're going to be like, okay, well, that's not great. But if they see 200 likes on a 2,000 views, with a 10% like rate, that's amazing. That's why likes are important. So it's free. Hit the likes. I don't remind people, I don't bully people to hit like, but Frank, it's nice to remind me and everyone as well that it is an important thing. And David Hong's bought me another wee dram to say, evening, Roy, I hope all is well. David, I'm feeling about as good as I've felt in a long time, my friend, and I hope you are too. Thank you very much for your dram, David. Cheers to you. A lot of my Glencairns have this kind of dishwasher fog ring around the top now. It kind of happens after a wee while. It's a bit of a shame that it does colours like that, but I've just got too many Glencairns on the go to bother hand washing them all the time. So I've got a bit lazy, and that's the price I'm paying for it. Falscraft is saying, Aquavita and Peathead's call helped. We're now at 170. That's terrific. It's just amazing. That just happens immediately. And then because people watch on the replay, they hear us talking about this, and maybe they remember to hit like on the replay too. But you can wait and decide till a wee bit later as to whether you've actually enjoyed it or not. Of course you can. It's just me tonight. There's no guests. There will be a quiz at the end, of course. At some point, well, I'll tell you exactly. I'll tell you tonight. I'll tell you just now. Next week is going to be a more community-themed vPub about friendship, and there will be guests. How I structure that and how I can pull that off and make it happen, because I want it to be a kind of live guest, virtual guest hybrid thing. So I need to put some thought into that, but that's next week's vPub is going to be, the theme will be friendship, specifically whiskey friendship. And I'm quite shocked at how impactful that's been for mental health, for connectedness, for everything positive that you can find in a friendship that whiskey has brought us. And there will be some examples of that next week. The week after that will be the 15th. So the 15th is Angus. Angus McRail is joining me for a session on the 15th of December. Then a week after that, it'll be the 22nd. So that'll be the Christmas. Hopefully that's going to be, if I can pull it together, I'm going to try and do the annual Christmas blind challenge, and I will try and focus on the community for that one too, and just have a bit of fun. And in the past, we've done kind of YouTube versus industry. We've done YouTube channels against each other and things. So I'll find another way to put a spin on that and get some samples sent out. Remember, I can only send samples out legally within my own territory. So the only way I'm going to get it into the hands of people further afield is if there's a willing mule. And then it'll be Christmas, and then at the end of the year, 29th of December, it'll be the summary of 2022. So December's pretty much dialed in now. We've kind of got it all worked out, and I'm up for it. I'm looking forward to it. So that means there's 5 vPubs in December. That'll be important when I talk about the monetization thing later on. Glenn Duncan has just joined Aquavitae Barflies. Glenn, so wonderful to see you in, my friend. Your bottle of Lark went down fantastically well at the Barflies gathering in Glasgow a couple of weeks ago. Everybody was talking about it. Gregor McQuee is in. Fantastic. He's saying, how do Barflies? Good to have you in, Gregor. Let's get started with these 24 bottles. The flight of 4, each flight of 4 is split into 4 categories. So I've got 6 flights, and each flight is going to bring an example of a value whiskey, an integrity whiskey, a treat whiskey, something a wee bit special, and also something interesting. The first 3 I have already pre-poured, and I'm going to pour along with you and pour the sample of the interesting whiskey, and we can talk about each flight as we go. In order to keep it quick, I'm just going to get on with this and tear through them. There's so many fantastic whiskies. We are absolutely spoiled for choice. It's a very, very positive vPub, I hope. And if I do find anything negative to bring up, remember, I'm always just trying to use maybe a negative critique in order to fathom a positive outcome. So, I don't intend anything tonight to be negative. First up, it's something that was launched this year. It's now on its 2nd batch at least, maybe more, but it's been fantastic value. It came out at 35, 38 pounds. It's now sitting about 38 to 40. But this is a blended malt from J&A Mitchell. This is Campbelltown Loch. Now, I know what you're saying. We kind of get this. We kind of get, depending on where you are, that's absolutely true. It might not have met or reached your market yet. But there's more of this sticking on the shelf all the time. There's more of it becoming available. This is not making a lot of money in the secondary market, so hopefully it's going to be left in peace on the shelf for people who want to buy it and pop it open and drink it like I have. I've got my bottle of Campbelltown Loch already labelled up, and it can go in my advent calendar. Next up, this is a whiskey that I was looking forward to, and I felt that there was a lot of pressure on this whiskey to be good. It is very good. This is my integrity pick in this flight, and it is integrity forward. You might remember that the maker of this whiskey came on and confirmed that that was the case, and that was very much part of their mentality down there in Southwest Ireland. But of course, I'm talking about, this is the first ever core range release actually from Dingle. This is their Dingle single malt. Now, of course, they do different styles of whiskey. Being Irish, they do single pot style Irish as well. They do lots of batches and special editions too. But this is widely available, their single malt. It's not too expensive. I think I paid 50 for this. So £50 or thereabouts. It's still quite young whiskey. You know, we're talking about 4 or 5 years, that type of order. But the flavour in this is ridiculous. It is quite an extreme example of that kind of fermentation, super sweet, ripe fruit forward whiskey, but it's so flavorful. And I also think that this is pretty unique. I think that Dingle, I hope that I might be able to pick it out blind later in the month from my advent calendar. Actually, because this is the first of the month, at some point tonight I'm going to have to reach in here and to pick out a blind sample. That might be what I do when we do the quiz tonight. I'll take the first blind challenge live with you, see how I got on with that. The next one is a treat whiskey. This is something a wee bit special. Now this, I've been very careful with because it disappeared. We couldn't buy it for a long time. A lot of the community were sending me messages saying, Roy, what's happened to it? What's happened to it? And the truth of it is there's not a lot of this around. And it's going to be a wee bit like maybe like a Springbank type release where once or twice a year they're going to release this. And if it sells out, it sells out. And if it's on the shelf, it's on the shelf. Just grab it while you can if it's your type of thing. But this is a new product from Arran that was originally released in 2019, and it's done tremendously well, and it deserves to be selling out. This is their 18-year-old. Look at that gorgeous, rich colour, fully natural colour as well. Because it's Arran, it tells us on there, non-chill filtered natural colour. Fantastic whiskey, really rich, really decadent. This is a treat of a whiskey. The sherry in this is mostly American oak in style, so it's a sweet, easy, rounded, ripe, juicy type sherry rather than a dry, spiced sherry. There are spices in here, there are cooked fruits and all of those wonderful things that we like to get from our sherry cask, but this is a much more approachable, easy thing. You pour this for somebody visiting your house, they'll feel very, very spoiled. Fantastic stuff. I think it's still sitting about 80 to 85 quid, something of that order. I should have checked all these prices before I went live tonight, but when you're dealing with 24 bottles, still, no excuse. I should have checked. If anybody else knows what Arran 18 or any of the whiskies I'm sharing tonight costs locally, by all means, just happily just share it, please. Mike Molasses is saying, I absolutely love Arran 18. It seems like a lot of people do, which is why it seems to be selling out. In my glass here, it's my first interesting pick. This came up in a theme in an earlier vPub this year. I also used it on a vPub last year as well. And as I got through the bottle last year and throughout this year, I started to think this is a special, special whiskey. This is not what we expect. But to test my theory, rather than just me relying on myself, I put this into the Aquavitae Blind Challenge on the 13th of November. So it was just a couple of weeks ago, and it went up against some really quite strong competition, including a 23-year-old Capardonic, a 33-year-old North Star Vega. So there were some big hitters in there. Some, let's say, valuable whiskies went in there. This is not a cheap whiskey. This is about £75, and it's non-age statement, and it's not transparent, it's opaque. And yet, pour by pour, I've grown to love this. And this easily won the Blind Challenge on the 19th of November. This won it. 6 out of 9 teams picked it as their favourite, and only 1 team out of the 9 put it anywhere at the end. Very, very compelling. There were a few people, you can see that this is actually the original yellow sticker that I put forward. This didn't make it to the blind. When I was selecting the whiskies, I put the yellow sticker on this to keep me straight so I could know which was which. But this is the whiskey that I used for that. Nobody came up to me and said they didn't enjoy the Yoichi. Everybody came up and said, okay, maybe Japanese whiskies are catching up again. They're not as cheap as they once were. They don't have age statements like they once did. But we've got a £75 whiskey that the peat is so light and delicate that it just adds that lovely, savoury, rich, kind of interesting lick to the whiskey. It is very clean. It is very, you could say sometimes, depending on what you compare it with, it's a wee bit simple. But if you spend time with it, it does open up. It does reveal itself. I would love to be able to try this at higher ABV, but it's bottled at 45%. It is what it is. Yes, it's chill filtered. We're going to have to suffer this. This is Japanese whiskey presented in that style. Still, it easily won that blind challenge. And if you sip this amongst other £75 whiskies, it always performs very, very well. So I've got a wee bottle marked Yoichi here. This is my interesting whiskey. I've got enough in the glass. I'm not going to pour any more in the glass. Now, I've got my tea towel at the ready in case of spillages here. And I was using my funnels. I've got various funnels for filling sample bottles, right? But I ended up, when I was filling all of these samples earlier tonight, I found out that probably the easiest thing to do is a free pour. But now that I'm doing it live, I'm probably going to start spilling it everywhere. Yep, there we go. Some drips coming out now. That's the first drips I've had all night. Let's call it live nerves. So we can tighten that up, dry it off. Now we've got, it's already labelled up. So there we go, our first flight after half an hour can go straight into the advent calendar. After each flight, I'll jump into the lounge and try and grab what you guys are saying. Jed Smith is saying, I think Arran's 18 is circa £90. So significantly lighter in colour now as well. Don't let that put you off, albeit still full sherry maturation. The more that we read into colour, there's an example I've got in the last flight of tonight, that I was kind of reading a lot into colour, and then I realised that I'm not even listening to my own dogma, right? If you get that reassurance that it's full sherry maturation, that's usually enough. Yes, these really dark whiskies are compelling. It's a good conversation point, but it's rarely a guarantee of any kind of experience. And actually, experience is what teaches us that. It's only time understanding whiskey and having more and more whiskies that we realise, Jed, as I'm sure that you do, as I think you've already hinted at it, it doesn't really matter that much. Not seen or tried the newest batch of Arran 18. It'll be one of the ones that I'm tempted to probably pick up again if I pass it. Karsten is saying, tried many batches of Arran 18 so far. For me, it seems totally killed by the sherry. It's not any vibrant to me. I usually love heavy sherry matured one too. Not for this one. So weird. It's interesting, Karsten. I would say that when batch variation, individual subjective palates, all of these things. But when I talk about the Arran 18 experience being very ripe, sweet, and juicy, rather than that kind of dark, leathery, old school, kind of spiced, dry, maybe that you would get from European oak and lots of Oloroso, I still believe that the majority of these casks to be Oloroso casks, by the way, for an Arran 18. But I'm also of the understanding that it's also almost exclusively American oak as well, which sweetens everything a bit. Tim Hoekstra is in. Good to see you, Tim. He's saying the Yoichi blew me away with that tasting. You weren't alone at that tasting, Tim. It got a lot of people. A lot of people were surprised just how compelling that was. Antonio D has bought my wee dram, saying Arran 18, €195 here in Portugal. That's too much, Antonio. It's just too much. I can't speak for your ability or what you can afford or anything, but for me, €195, I'm out. That's too much. £95, £90 that's the ceiling for it, I think, where we are today. Remember, at that price point, we're starting to get into a huge selection of competitors out there in the sherry realm. Whiskey Franco's saying, saw the Yoichi going from $280 at a local liquor store here in Colorado. I almost fell backwards into a rum display when I saw it. Too much. Don't touch it. It's £75, which is equivalent of yours $95. It's maybe a treat whiskey. But honestly, $280, that's down to the retailer. It's down to distribution, surely. Jed is saying, I'm not concerned at all. I fully trust Arran. It's the beauty of natural whiskey. We agree, Jed. Wonderful to have you in, buddy, too. Falscraft is saying €105 here in Germany, so that's quite a difference. It's more similar to the pricing here in the UK. And Graham Fraser is saying Yoichi is certainly an affordable Japanese whiskey. I keep meaning to get a bottle of its non-peated partner Miyagikyo. You might not be surprised to hear that that's also on my radar. Miyagikyo for me has always been quite a delicate proposition, and most of them I've tried have been fairly young. But that official bottling that's out from them, Graham, is interesting to me. Maybe one for 2023. And Gordon Fraser is saying, I didn't enjoy the new 18 as much as the old 18, but then again, I'm moving away from sherry. So Gordon's on this kind of really quite interesting finding pools of preference to bathe in for a little while. Am I going out of focus again? Is my camera playing that game? Stop it. Stop it. Do we need more light? Maybe is that what's going on? Sorry, apologies if not that you have to see me, right? But I don't know. I can see that it's distracting. Yeah, he's gone into these different pools of experience, and time he's going to realize that you arrive at a point where it's really confusing because everything is wonderful. But I do find myself having preferences, and I'm bizarrely enjoying my sherried whiskies right now. Call it time of the year. And one, Butrego, Juan Butrego, it looks like. I know I'm making a mess of your pronunciation of your name, Juan, but welcome to the Aquaviti Barflies. Thanks for your support. And Lowlander is pointing out that I did go out of focus. Yeah, you're slightly blurry, but better now after you tipped it. Let's get on to the second one quickly. We sip of the Yoichi. Such an elegant wee whiskey. First up, this is an odd one to put forward as a budget whiskey, and I've heard stories that it's creeping up in price, which might take it out of the realm of budget. But this is a 15-year-old. We believe it to be naturally presented. I wish there were a wee bit. This could be in the integrity lineup here if there was a bit more information on the bottle here, but it's 46% ABV, 15 years old, and still you can pick this up for less than £60. It's mostly sherry matured, does suffer from batch variation like all malt whiskies do, but I would say that Glenfarclas is a wee bit more kind of sinusoidal in its variation than a lot of them. But this one is okay. This is a good wee batch in this bottle here. This is Glenfarclas's 15-year-old. If I was to pick anything from Glenfarclas's, I still have a soft spot for the 10. I still do. I know that it's a low ABV whiskey, but it's usually low price as well, and it's a good wee, delicate, easy Speyside drinker. If I was to pick anything from the range, it would be this or potentially the 105. And the 105 batch variation as well is a thing too, but I think that they don't really care. What I would say to Glenfarclas is, by all means, continue not caring about trying to dial in consistent batches all the time. That should be secondary to just bringing out a really good quality whiskey and letting the flavour profile vary from batch to batch. But tell us what batch it is. Put a date code on it that we can read it, where we don't need a magnifier or some kind of super bionic vision to read these silly little. This is a 1902-21 date code here that I need Ralphie's steampunker to. Can you almost see that date code there? It's so small at the bottom of that highlight there. It's just about trying to focus. 0221. Let's celebrate batches in a batch made product. It just makes sense, doesn't it? Next up, I make no apologies for this. I discovered this in 2020 and I've loved it ever since. I'm now on batch. This is the 2022 release. So the maiden release was 2020. They had a 2021 release and a 2022 release. Yes, this is what I'm talking about. Celebrate the batch variation. Celebrate it. This is about the same price, maybe a few pounds more expensive, £65 compared to that Glenfarclas. 3 years younger, but glorious, glorious whiskey. Yes, listen, I know a lot of us are kind of going, the 2020 maiden was the best. Okay, best foot forward. Maybe that was their intention all the while. They put in some older stock or did something, just that old school, dry, spiced sherry hit. Lots of European oak flavours in that maiden release. Whereas it's kind of sweetened out in the following batches, but I still have nobody to bring me a challenger for this at £65. There's nothing out there that can do what this does at £65. Ignore the 12-year age statement. Celebrate the different batches year by year and celebrate this natural presentation of a really gorgeous whiskey. And also the ostentatious, some people love this lovely decanter style bottle. And certainly you don't need to toss this away. You can use this for nice things afterwards. But ignore all of that because the liquid inside is fantastic. Looking forward to stumbling over this in my advent calendar. And then I've got a fan favourite. Is Gordon Fraser still in here? I believe he likes a wee bottle of this liquid with the rest of us. This is a new distillery, but it doesn't feel new because of how much we talk about it on the vPub too. You would think that I was sponsored by this company, but I am in no way sponsored by these guys. I bought this. I managed to grab a hold of this myself. I bought this one from the Green Welly Stop, which is an ethical retailer as part of the Oswas. Tyndrum whiskey, that is. This is their Madeira cast strength, and it's just outstanding whiskey. It's so good, so flavored, so spicy, so all over the place. It's got lots of communicative, jaggy edges to it too. It's vibrant and alive, and then it's just enveloped in this sweet, thick, heavy, gorgeous sherry, the Madeira cask, sorry, that just works. It's an absolute cracker. If I could see another Ardna Murchan Madeira cask on the shelf or pick it up because I'm tearing through this far too fast, I would have it in a heartbeat. This is an absolute belter, and if it wasn't so rare, this would be a contender for my whiskey of the year. It's just a beauty, beautiful, beautiful thing. Remember, not everything needs to be elegant and clean and balanced and everything. Sometimes the best whiskies are things that really make us just pay attention. And that's one of these whiskies. I can't decide if that's sweet or savoury or coastal or salty or it's just, it depends on the moment. It depends on the sip. It depends on everything. It's just one of those really, really cracking whiskies. And finally, this is brand new to the collection, and I need to talk about this because this is really good. There's not much of it. It's very rare, but I think it's still available. I should have checked before I went live tonight. Maybe you can tell me if it's not. Apologies if it isn't. But those of you that missed out on my Loch Lomond release, the Aquavitae Barflies release earlier this year, everybody was raving about it. I got a fantastic message from Drew from Arizona who tried it privately earlier this week, and he was gushing about it. He sent me a direct message to tell me how much he was enjoying it. Mine was a 10-year-old first fill bourbon Chardonnay yeast Loch Lomond expression, unpeated from the straight neck pot stills, low cut strength. This is almost the exact same spec as that, except it's a 9-year-old product. And this is refill. But where mine is first fill, compared to this, it makes this taste first fill, and mine tastes like refill, if that makes sense. Mine was just a wee bit more spirity. I'm only this far through it. It's only been a few days. But this, for a cask strength product as well, it's 9 years old, it's 2010 distillate. This has been in glass for a wee while. They were going to bring this out in 2020, and they put it, I don't know what happened. They put it to the side and it didn't make it out in 2020. Pandemic issue probably. And eventually this is now their first distillery edition. This is going to be an annual release, but this first edition is only 265 bottles. In future it'll be much bigger. But it's 57.1% and £65. You need to buy this direct from Loch Lomond. If anybody is looking for a place to have this delivered until they can pick it up, you can get in touch with me through direct messages, especially if you're a patron. Get in touch and we can arrange it to be shipped here just for this, because I know that so many of you weren't able to get mine, and this is very, very, very close to that. I'm so happy to have this bottle because it means I can lean off my own a wee bit more, which is disappearing far too fast. I love it so. It's very unique whiskey, that lovely, lovely, vibrant, citric, sherberty, fizzy, effervescent type note that we get from the Chardonnay yeast is obvious here. I almost made that without too many drops. I hope that that's the right bottle I've put it in. Yes, it is. It says Loch Lomond DE on the bottom. Distillery edition. Reb Mordecai, good to see you in. Now, obviously, I know that Reb is a minister, the equivalent of reverend, I guess it would be. And I call him Reb. I hope he doesn't take offence at that. I know your name is Mordecai, but you'll always be Reb to me. He's saying the Loch Lomond Chardonnay yeast was incredible. Actually, it's the best Loch Lomond I ever had. Thanks for the sample as well. I'm with you there, Reb. I love what comes from the straight neck pot stills at Loch Lomond generally. I love that light fruity style. But to have it in such a kind of dialed up format, cask strength, fully natural, with that Chardonnay yeast in the mix as well, it's fabulous stuff. Anyway, that goes in along with my, oops, I forgot to pop in the Arran 18. Along with my other pre-pours, the Turret, the Ardna Madeira cask, and the Glenfarclas 15. My advent calendar, it's filling up nicely. Sorry about the noise, that was quite close to the mic there, I think. That's my interesting pick. There were only 265 bottles of that, by the way, and it came out for sale last weekend. I don't know if there are any still available. You can let us know if it is. Justin Wannistein Aquavitae, the pace of this video is much quicker than I anticipated. Justin, we've got 24 whiskies to get through, and we're only through 8 of them so far, so we need to keep it quickly paced. Listen, see, while there's so many of you in right now supporting, thank you. Thank you also for giving me a job. That's the crazy thing. I'm sitting in front of you today. Now, of course, my day is made up of much more than the vPub. I plan for the vPub and I consider things and I prepare for it and all of these things. But running the channel's a much bigger thing. Comments, trying to keep up with comments, the messages and everything that the channel generates is huge. But then I've also got, through the time that you've afforded me through supporting me on the Aquavitae channel, I've been able to do projects like the Online Scotch Whisky Awards with Ralphie. That's an annual thing. That's a kind of concentrated effort that kicks in late summer through till, as you know, early November. So that gets super, but that's just intense at a certain point of the year. Dramface is a daily thing. There's content going out on Dramface every single day. But make no mistake, Dramface is now at a point where it's able to pay and recover its own costs. But the reason that Dramface exists, the reason that I could go ahead and buy the domains and pay for the website and pay for all the tools that was required to build that and make it robust and make it slick, you did that. I've now recovered my costs from Dramface and it's now standing on its own 2 feet. But Dramface remains part of my job. Then everything else like the podcast and all the other peripheral things that comes from having this whiskey life, it's my job now. And I get a real thrill now, where I used to wonder how I was going to broach the subject. I get a thrill out of admitting to people what I do for a living these days. It's odd and weird, and I have to pinch myself because I do feel very, very lucky and fortunate. And I know I have hundreds and hundreds of people to thank for that being possible. So I want to talk a wee bit about that. I want to talk about how that has come to be. A lot of new people around the channel. There's a lot of new folk that are just in. They don't really understand. They don't know what a barfly is. They don't know what a patron is, and they don't know what are all these kind of super chats. There's super chats literally coming in right now. They just don't understand. Is that how Roy's paid? Is that how he gets his money? Tonight, I'm going to tell you how I get my money. Jimmy Lagg is saying it's almost impossible to believe how you and whiskey have brought so many people together and financed your life. Almost too good to be true. Jimmy, you sum it up perfectly, perfectly well. I forgot to pour a wee Loch Lomond from my interesting pick. Nobody's going to be getting emotional tonight. James DeGiulio is in saying finally live. This is for changing. This is for changing 2 in Aruba to single malt whiskey. Fantastic, terrific stuff, James DeGiulio. I managed to meet you in Islay this year, of course. I've yet to meet Jimmy Legg, but thank you both very much for your drams. Cheers. And here's another wee dram. Just when it grabs your attention like that. This is, so from that really calm, smooth, easy, delicate and elegant Yoichi, this unpeated Loch Lomond comes in and it's just, everything is zinging. It's like fireworks. It's fresh and vibrant and alive. Jason Coates, you star. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. Cheers, Roy. Jason, it's so good to see you in. That wee icon, that name, Jason Coates, I have been reading for 5 years at least, my friend. I celebrated 5 years of the vPub last week, Jason, and you were certainly around right at the birth of it all. But to have you tuning in tonight is a real privilege. Cheers to Jason Coates. I hope you're keeping well, my friend. I was in the Good Spirits Company picking things up for the blind challenge. They were giving me the speed pourers and things, cool little tools to help us pour all those 350 drams, empty bottles to decant the whiskey into so that nobody knew what we were actually serving. And I was in there, and there was a gentleman up for Glasgow Whisky Festival weekend, not to go to the festival. He was just up with family, but it was just coincidentally he was up that weekend. And as I'm standing in a shop, he walked up to me and introduced himself as Joe. Joe, if you're listening, leave a wee comment underneath and tell me that I've got your name properly and remind me where you were from, my friend. But he spoke to me for a second, and the words that he said stayed with me and made me kind of wonder a little. And he said, Roy, sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to shake your hand and say thanks for all you do. Fantastic, Joe. Thank you so much. But he also said, I'm not a barfly, but, and then he went on to finish what he had to say. And it's that stayed with me. I am not a barfly, but. So I want to talk about what my take on what a barfly is. It's completely up to you what it is to you, but I'll tell you what a barfly is. Especially when Bea, who was at that festival weekend, and she was at the festival with us, and she came to the blind taste on the Sunday, came back to me and she said, how do I join the barflies? So Bea misinterpreted it as I think Joe did in the shop, that the barflies were how to support what I do. And there is truth in that. Barflies is the kind of collective noun for people that some people choose to self-refer as a barfly. And if you don't, you're just part of the beautiful whiskey folk. You're just tuning in. You're just part of the audience, the viewership, whatever you want to call yourself. But some people choose to call themselves barflies. Some people don't. Some people choose to join as a barfly. And that's where you click the join button on YouTube. If you're watching on mobile, you don't have the join button. I still think they haven't sorted that out yet. But if you're on desktop, there's a join button, and for $1.99 a month, you can join the Barflies. And what that gives you is that little loyalty badge that changes colour as depending on how long you're a Barfly supporter. The pink ones have been here the longest, and they kind of go through these different colours. But they also give you access to all these wee emojis and things to colour up the chat. Glencairn emojis, whiskey-themed emojis, heart whiskey emojis, all of these things, just to make it a bit of fun. But the biggest thing that they do is that I don't get money from YouTube anymore for ad revenue. I hate sitting through ads on YouTube, and I don't want people watching my long, winded content sitting through ads. The Barfly stepped in and meant that I never need to monetize any videos on the Aquavitae channel anymore. Going forward, there may be some historical videos still on the channel that are still monetized. You might have to sit through ads for legacy stuff, sure, but for the last 2 years at least, the vPub hasn't been monetized. And for 2022, any other videos that go out in the channel, such as recycled reviews, have not been monetized either. I don't want you sitting through ads. However, YouTube still gives me money. If I put ads on my videos, I would get a cut of the ad revenue from those videos. I choose not to. But the other side of that is that if you buy super chats for me, thank you so much. If you join the Barfly support, either the $1.99 per month, euros, dollars, pounds, whatever your currency is, YouTube take a cut of that. 35% more or less. That's a huge chunk. If they were paying me ad revenue, they would give me a huge chunk. I choose not to take that. We have to remember the power of YouTube. If I had to pay for YouTube as a SaaS service, software as a service, it would be extortionately expensive. The tools, the storage, the promotional activity that they do for us, the power of that search tool is huge in YouTube. The analytics are ridiculously in depth. You can sit in the analytics side of YouTube for days and days and days on end and never fully understand it, how deep you can go. It's an amazing platform. And the reason that we are all here, the reason that we enjoy everything that YouTube gives us is because of that financial cut. So a lot of people get shocked and think it's too much what they take. But I have to always remind myself what they give me for nothing. And if I did choose to switch on monetization, which I'm not going to do, they would also give me a chunk of the advertising revenue that they generate from my content. On balance, I think it's fair. That is not how I'm paid. The drams that you buy me are fantastic. The Barfly support that you give me, there are 200 and odd Barflies now. It's amazing. It's incredible support. But I can't sustain a living from it. YouTube cannot sustain me. It's not possible to do that. Whiskey is very niche. Even channels like Ralphie and bigger channels, again, like the Whiskey Vault and the Whiskey Tribe, if they were relying on YouTube alone, they could not do what they do. The way that all of those channels endure going forward is through Patreon. Patreon is separate. Patreon is a very, very different thing. It's a different platform. You need to come outside of YouTube. You need to go to patreon.com. You need to search for Aquavitae. You need to find me there. You need to see what I'm doing and you say, okay, and you sign up as a patron because you want to pay me. You want me to be successful and you want me to endure and continue going forward. The reason I stepped up to support creators in YouTube is because I discovered I was watching more YouTube content than I was watching Netflix and other streaming services, and even more than I was listening to Spotify and things that I was happy to pay a subscription for monthly. I realized that if I wanted my favorite content on YouTube to endure, that I was going to need to support this. I was going to need to step up and pay for what I believed in. Everything I'm talking about tonight, by the way, is optional for everyone. My content and the vPubs will always be free. There will never be a paywall there. The option to step up and support is always that, an option. What do you get in return for it? Well, apart from what I do every week, I think for me, this is not one size fits all. This is not to put shade on any other model that exists out there for earning revenue or making a YouTube channel or whatever content that you create function. But for me, it's intrinsic. It's the foundation. It affords me the ability to please myself. I can do whatever I like. I can buy any whiskey that I want to buy, not just what's available through a partnership or a sponsorship. I can say what I like about that whiskey. And I know how it impacts me as a consumer customer because I know how much money I've handed over for that whiskey. It's not something that's been gifted or given for free. Independence is fundamental to all of this. The Oswis exacerbated things a little bit earlier this year. I know a lot of people were just, I think sometimes when you're too transparent, it almost encourages more kind of questions. But everything on the Oswis is paid for by those same patrons that support the Aquavitae channel and Ralphie.com. Ralphie and myself split the costs of the Oswis right down the middle, 50-50. Both of us will have it no other way. There is not a single cent, not a single sample, not a single bottle of whiskey, not an affiliate link, nothing has come from the industry. And that's easy for us because we have already been going, Ralphie's been going for 12 or 13 years now doing that very thing. And I'm now here sitting here 5 years of the vPub and 5.5 years of the channel overall doing the same thing without needing anything from the industry other than openness, access, transparency, information, polite professionalism, respect, support, honesty. That's all we need, just the same as any consumer would want from a decent, responsible company. That's all I don't need free whiskey. I have too much whiskey. I've literally just done vPubs on having too much whiskey. You did that. Does it not make sense that if I'm going to review, and I know I'd play it down, I'm not a reviewer, I'm not a traditional reviewer, but that's not true, is it? I am. I review. The recycle reviews are literally called reviews. By definition, I'm reviewing. This vPub every week, I'm picking up whiskies and telling you my absolutely independent opinion on these things. I think that's important. If you're going to critique something, it's a bit like, this is maybe it's a poor analogy, but if you turn up to someone's house and they cook you a meal and you were to sit down and critique the meal, that would be in poor taste. But if you go to a restaurant and you sit down and you hand over money for it, I think that you're absolutely in your right place to critique the meal and expect a certain thing from that money. I just feel it's the only way to do things. And if I was needing to get all of these bottles I've shared with you from, and all the rest of the bottles I'm going to share with you tonight from the producers, I would feel, I don't know, the human dynamic is a complex thing, and I can only speak for myself. I don't know how I would be with that whiskey. I would try to be honest about it. But I know that being brutally honest about something that I didn't connect with would immediately mean that I don't get any more of that product. It's just the way that it works. We can't all be Serge Valentine, right? There are lots of channels out there that are part-time channels. It's not their jobs, and they've not built up the critical mass that I have, and they are able to function with a mix of pleasing themselves, saying what they want to say, and being able to take occasional bottles and not caring if they get any more. If they don't get any more, they don't get any more. They just continue reviewing what they want to do. But when an offer of something free comes along, they don't have the funds available to finance their channel, especially if they're doing weekly content or regular monthly content, something like that, to always have something to fresh to talk about. So they'll find other ways of doing that. And the ones that I talk to, the ones that I collaborate with, the ones that I call friends, will tell you, and they will be open about it, and they will be transparent. They will put it on YouTube and say, this is a paid promotion. I was gifted this by, and they'll hold the bottle up and tell you where it came from. Transparency is all we can ask for, and they do it. That's why I'm talking to you about this tonight. I think it's important because people are starting to ask me, and they're starting to suggest that it's in my interests to sell whiskey. They are saying that what I am doing is selling whiskey. Some people, and it's a very small minority. I put it to you and them. It is in my interests to sell less whiskey. The less whiskey I sell, the better I'm supported by you. Think about it for a minute. I want everything that I recommend to you to be to smack you right between the eyes, for you to hold the glass up and say, this is a good whiskey. And even if it doesn't do that, you can at least objectively say, it's not up my street, but I can see why people rave about it. I hope that you never pick up a whiskey and say, this is garbage. Why is Roy talking about this? I hope that never, ever happens. I am not selling whiskey. If you think about it for long enough, I'm trying to sell quality. It's a very, very different thing. Sorry for the monologue. I needed to get it off my chest. I hope it's a bit of an explainer for those people who don't understand the difference between Barflies and Patreon. Patreon is the lifeblood of the channel. Being a patron means that you pay my salary. Barflies means that you keep things ad-free, and it also contributes to my salary, but the ratio is very small. 10 to 15%, 20% at most of my earnings comes from YouTube. The guts of my 80% plus of my earnings comes from Patreon. But Jenkins has bought me a wee dram as well, right on point. I've gotten so much from my support of your channel, Roy. Not only have I gotten your content, but I've gained a community of like-minded people and some good friends. Bud, that's exactly what I have gained from it too, make no mistake. Next week's vPub, we'll touch on that, hopefully. Bud, thank you very much for your dram, buddy. Hopefully, Bud, you've managed to acquire and be able to share yourself some decent whiskies too. Multi-Agus Muncher Matthew is in saying, I will drink to that, Roy. Saw some cracking pictures of your shop. I hope that I'm not telling tales out of school by giving up your anonymity here, but Kinnaird Head Whiskies, an ethical retailer in the Oswes, put some pictures of their shop. I hope I get a chance to drop by. I know you're doing online trade as well, Matthew. Wonderful to have you in. Kilco Brian is in with a wee Glencairn glass up saying cheers. Cheers to you too, Brian, my friend. And Scott Allen is saying, proud to be supporting you since early 2019. Scott, indeed you have. Wow, how much the vPub has grown. Fantastic. Thank you very much, Scott Allen. Raise a wee glass to you and Becky too. I hope you're both doing very, very well. And Shavar is Björgvinsson from Iceland is in saying, I'm a proud patron. You are, buddy, and it's wonderful to have welcomed you in there as well. I think you're my only patron in Iceland too, which is pretty cool. Rick Johnson is saying, I picked up a Compass Box Orchard House based on one of your recycled reviews, and it was I was nervous there, Rick, to finish that sentence. And it was an exceptional find, thanks. Well, you saw how successful that was in the Oswes. It's not just me that's enjoyed that. And I think the Orchard House was actually from a friend of mine, Scott Monroe. He was the one to say, by the way, you need to try this. So this is a bi-directional thing, this recommendation thing that's happening. A lot of the recommendations I'll even share with you tonight are from the community. Cheers, Rick. Thanks to you. And it's Falscraft is saying, Roy, through your current sources of income, do you make approximately as much money as you did in your regular job? No, not yet. I said it a wee bit earlier, Falscraft. So I was paid reasonably well. I mean, I don't know if I was maybe just under industry average for the role that I was in, but I was happy. It was fine. COVID comes along in 2020, and guess what? Nobody needs somebody who does events and marketing and all of that stuff, product launches, all of these kind of things. That's not required anymore. There's nobody about, so my contract wasn't renewed after 21 years with the same company, and I could see it coming. But I had kind of planned a transition at some point in the future to doing this. I hoped that it could grow. So where COVID took something away from me, it gave me something too, because everyone was at home, and I went from 2 vPubs a month to twice a week in 2020, you might remember. So I just stepped on the gas and just went for it, and it paid off. It really did. I'm now at the point that I would suggest that I'm about 75% of my earnings from my previous role. As I speak to you at the end of 2022, I'm about 3/4 to 80% of the way there. That's amazing. It's just amazing. And the other thing is I'm not capped. If I continue to do this thing, if I can continue to enjoy this and have the energy, I don't I don't have that responsibility. I don't need to sit down in an annual review and justify my pay rises and things. You decide what I get paid as a community. So my duty of care is to you. Again, I'm not trying to sell whiskey, trying to bring quality. Time for a Drama saying it says a lot about the cut of your cloth, Roy, that you see Aquaviti supporting so many other creators. You're a wee gem, so yeah. Thanks very much, Gregor, buddy. Thank you so much. Nice words. Barter Hordes is in saying, as a newbie at the whiskey community, it was the recycled reviews that brought me to your channel. To be honest, before I attended the vPub once or twice, the length of them was daunting. But now you're here, Robert, and it requires investment from you too, doesn't it? To understand what the biggest value proposition is. Good to have you in, buddy. Whiskey with Molly Bennett saying, you invited me to your house in my journey, fully committed me to this community. You and everyone else was so welcoming. What a community. Ben, fantastic to know you, my friend. Cheers. And Chris Brown saying, I think I made a mess of my Patreon subscription when I was last logged into it and changed my subs. I'll get in and fix it tomorrow. Listen, if you are a patron, understand that the way I work it is that you pay per creation. So you pay per vPub, and there are 3 tiers. You can pay $2.50, $5, or $10. Or you can overwrite that and pay anything you want. You can pay 50 cents or $1 or whatever, and you pay per vPub. But you can also cap. So if you decide to pay $1 per vPub and cap it at 1 vPub a month, you become a patron for $1 a month. You might decide that it's the best thing on the planet and you want to pay $10 for every vPub that you enjoy. It's entirely optional and flexible and up to you. Why do I choose that over monthly subscription at a fixed price? Because I want to take winter breaks and I want to take summer breaks, and I want utter flexibility. You only pay for content when I'm putting content out there, and that's important to me. It's the best of both worlds if you configure it properly. Chris, do not have anxiety about the way you've configured it. If it works for you, I'm just very, very grateful. Craig Dearden is saying, just didn't retire, Roy. Don't retire. I'm not in any hurry to retire. Do I look like I'm at an age ready to retire yet, Craig? I hope not. Tat is in. That's a brand new name, I think. Tat. He's a Barfly, though, and he's saying, I'm enjoying the Whiskey Exchange bottling of Loch Lomond Chardonnay for the first time tonight. Completely understand the hype from you and Scotty. Fantastic. Glad you're getting your head around it. The Whiskey Exchange is the weakest of the 3. Mine is better. This is pretty good too. Tat, it's wonderful to have you in, and I'm glad you're enjoying that Loch Lomond. Lowland is saying it's your success as well, and thank you so much. No Rolex is saying, wow, that's really good. 75%, I'd accept 50% to get out of PD reviews. And that's the thing. When I first in 2020, it wasn't close to that. It was terrifying. The jump and the loss of revenue, the loss of money in 2020. But it just came good. It just grew from 2020. And the more I talk about it, the more it helps that happening. And yet I don't feel comfortable talking about it often. So you don't hear me talking about Patreon support every week in the vPub. I'll often talk about the Barflies, what that's about, of course. But Patreon, it's just, I think I'm in just it's a cultural thing. I don't know what it is. Talking about money is often a wee bit awkward or difficult. It's difficult to coach it and pitch it right. And Brian is saying Patreon has been life-changing for me too. I am a supporter of a proud supporter of Brian too. is life changing for me too. Not only in supporting others, but also that others are so willing to support me too. Perfect, Brian. Fantastic stuff. And Antonio D is saying you are providing us a service. Aye, Antonio, and I'm providing myself a service. Cheers. Thanks for the dram. Wonderful to have you in and part of the Barflies. Let's go on with this thing. Next flight of 4. Start off with a budget dram. There's going to be no surprises. I have to talk about this. It has to be in my advent calendar this year because when I pick it out, I want to be able to taste it blind and I want to see how it stacks up against all the others. Look how well this thing did in the Oswas this year as well. Everybody's talking about the beautiful, good value, great value. Distell product used to be Burn Stewart Ledaig 10-year-old, 46.3% fully natural, and it tells us so on the label, which is wonderful to see. Well, it says non-chill filtered. It doesn't actually mention colour. It might say natural colour on the box, which is long since gone. This is a terrific whiskey, and it's going to be no surprise to anybody that it's already pre-poured. And here is one of my budget picks for my 2022 Advent calendar. So what about the integrity bottling? Well, same company, exact same company. We're going to go up in the age bracket a wee bit here to 18 years old. This is an integrity bottling. This is natural colour, non-chill filtered, aged in first fill bourbon casks. I think it's a finish, if I'm honest. I think it's in refill for a number of years, but in the last few years it goes into first fill. But this is my whiskey of the year this year. Deanston, 18 years old, £75, still good value, but you can often find it on offer even less than that. And that makes it outstanding value. Understand what you're getting here. This 18-year-old is not one of these rich, decadent 18-year-olds. This is a good quality whiskey, but it's very bourbon flavour focused. Some people find this a wee bit too sweet and a wee bit too oaken. I do not. I find that to be in check, and I find it to be very much my style. I would be curious to try this without that first fill bourbon element and have 18 years Deanston and from a refill cask. But beggars cannot be choosers. And when we've got a fantastic product like this for £75, I've got a wee bottle going into my 2022 calendar. Sorry about the noise and the clinking. And here's where we're going to kind of up things a wee bit. I am not sold on this yet. This has to work harder for me. If I talk about the Deanston showing a wee bit of oak, this shows far too much oak for me. This is close to bourbon in style for me. It's not bourbon. This is single pot still Irish. But this is the most oaky single pot still Irish I have ever sipped. People are loving this. They're raving about it. It's getting huge scores, huge write-ups. It still has to convince me, so it goes in the Advent calendar for this year. This is a Middleton's Gold Spot, 9-year-old. Now, it's good ABV on this one. Believe it to be fully natural, 251.4%. Everything in terms of specs shouts quality. I paid $110 for this. In pounds, that's about £100. This is a lot of money. This has got a lot of work to do. This is a rare product, and we're paying for that rarity. I'll give it more time, and I'll give it a chance. It's in the Advent calendar for this year. Whiskey Franco's bought me a dram. Oh, what else have I missed? Somebody becoming a member. Lunesca joining the Aquavitae Barflies. Welcome, Lunesca. Nice to have you. Who's bought me the dram? Whiskey Franco, fantastic. I recall watching The Magic of Isla many moons ago, and that inspired me to start sharing my whiskey journey on Instagram. Cheers to you, Roy, and all the Barflies I've enjoyed along the way. Thank you so much, Whiskey Franco. Now, I discovered your real name recently in a post or a message or something, and I decided that I would try to commit it to memory, but I think I failed at that. So apologies to you. I'm getting WhatsApp notifications coming in. So I think, unless any of them are urgent, I'm just going to shut that down to stop that distracting pinging happen in the background. Let's go on to my interesting pour from that flight. This is brand new to me and to you. I've spoken about the new release from Lagg. I was a bit cold at first approach, first sample, first sip. It took me a wee while to understand it. Then I went over and had a wee visit at the distillery. I spent a bit more time with it. Ended up walking out with a bottle. Opened that bottle, it's sitting over there. And the first release from Lagg is quite a compelling and interesting thing for me. But it's a young, spirit forward, shouty, loud whiskey. This is too. But my goodness. If you like interesting whiskies, if that's what you're into, I'm into that. I hope you are too. I mean, they don't have to be interesting. They don't have to be super compelling. Some whiskies, it's nice for them to be delicate. It's nice for them to be balanced. It's nice for them to be fruity and rich and all of these other things. But if you like interesting whiskies that make you really chew on them and think and focus and concentrate and consider, that's what this is. This one I've just poured, I'm going to pour some into a wee glass as well. This is the second release from Lagg. They've got a third release out too, which is wine cask, which I wasn't too fussed about. I will try it as a dram. Get a wee dram in the Bonaccord or somewhere. But this is the sherry cask from Lagg. It was the same price as the other ones. Not cheap. This is 3 to 4 year old max whiskey. £75 is a lot. It's really natural, 50% ABV as well. Of course, it's going to be from Isle of Arran Distillers. Terrific presentation, and I actually love the design of this bottle. I love that kind of ripple, that kind of almost like it's suggesting the texture of the whiskey there, like it's clinging to the glass. This is a prettier bottle in the flesh than it appears in most photographs, in my opinion. I like it. This whiskey for me is even more interesting. Nobody's going to get an easy ride from this whiskey. This whiskey is going to be asking you to pay attention to it. It's going to coat every single part of your palate, and it's going to hang around there for a long time in order for you to literally lick it off. This is a cracking old school type cask thing that's going on here as well. I think it brings out some funk and interesting grunge, let's say, to the whiskey. It almost goes a little bit sackcloth and industrial. You're in a kind of workshop of some description. There's even a wee bit of the agricultural thing leans a bit further into a wee bit more of a kind of farmy funk. And the peat is an aromatic peat. There's a wee bit of linseed oil in here, but not in a negative way. Still a lot of youth on it. Thick arrival, treacle, molasses, smoked, spiced, chili spice, treacle. All of these new distilleries are not bringing us core product. But more than any, Lagg is the most profound example of this concept. They are bringing us snapshots in time. You have to view it a little bit like if you remember when Kilkerran, before they brought out their core 12-year-old, they had the work in progress releases. That's kind of what's happening here. We are not going to be able to buy this experience from Lagg, I don't think, in 10 years' time. It's going to have changed significantly. This is one of the boldest new spirits I've tasted. It's controversial for me to say that I'm glad I paid £75 for this. I would rather have paid a wee bit less, honestly. 50 quid, 55 quid, tops. But I paid 75, and it's selling. It's selling fast at that, so you know who's going to take it away from them. However, I don't feel cheated at 75. I don't know that I would go out and continually replace it going forward at 75. It has to settle. The price has to settle. The quality has to catch up, and the price needs to be tempered a wee bit. These are the first 3 releases. But I'm really glad to have this. I'm really glad to have it. And that's why, along with the other 3 I shared with you, the Gold Spot 9, the Deanston 18, and the Electric 10, they all go in. My super posh advent calendar. Whiskey with Molly Benny saying, had it in the pot, thought it was good, but not £75. That's what I'm saying. Didn't buy the Lagg, too expensive, says Whiskey with Molly. And Jim's sounds like it's whiskey for me. Jimmy Legg, I would happily pour you that Lagg, and I think that you would find it interesting. Found the bourbon Lagg, says Harrow. already bold. Looking forward to how it is in a few years' time. I think it's going to be terrific as it matures. Falsgraph is saying the lags I see at my primary source, batch 2 and 3, are €128.50. Too much for me. Too much for me too. Far too much. Far too much. Peter Wilcox is saying, Roy, can I ask, don't you find it hard handing over £75 for a 3-year-old whiskey when you have just held up a glorious Deanston 18? Do you not think prices have gone bonkers? I think whiskey has gone bonkers, Peter Wilcox, and I think this is very important to consider. Deanston 18 is 18 years aged. Fantastic, really is fantastic. And getting it to 18 years is massive. Just consider that. I wasn't even into whiskey 18 years ago. When that Deanston was laid down, I wasn't drinking whiskey. 17 years ago. So that was laid down in 2003, 2004 of that order, maybe some older stock in there. Once it's made and once it's aging, the cost per litre of maturation is very, very small. What you are actually paying for is how there's just so little of that liquid as the years tick by. There becomes less and less and less and less and less. And it becomes quite precious in terms of it's rare. But it hasn't cost a lot to get there in true terms and monetary terms. To have a 3 or 4-year-old whiskey to exist, such as that Lagg, cost an absolute fortune, and they are nowhere close to recovering their investment. They had to build a distillery and make it. Now, as it matures, as it's going to sit there, the cost is less. It's just taking up space. 1 litre of liquid in a space in a warehouse somewhere that's eventually going to make its way into a bottle. I take your point. An 18-year-old whiskey against a 3-year-old whiskey. But if we keep thinking that way, we are going to starve ourselves from whiskey experiences. Taste the liquid. It's not possible for everybody to try before they buy. I understand this. But the flavour that comes out of 3-year-old whiskey today bears no resemblance to the flavour that was in 3-year-old whiskies 18 years ago. It's not comparable on any level. The more we taste these new whiskies, whether you want to look at it as disruptive or innovative or modern, or there's lots of different ways of looking at it, the more we taste these, the more we understand these different dynamics at play. I think it's amazing, and I want to celebrate the fact that I can have a delicious Deanston 18 years old. But I think it's also amazing that I can have flavour like that Lagg, or so many other new distilleries, the Ardna I held up earlier, that's just too tempting. It's too wonderful. So I do want to pay the money for it. When I pick them out blind from my advent calendar later in the month, I'm going to be saying to myself, how much will I pay for this? As it's in the glass and I don't know what I'm tasting. It's going to be one of the things I think about. It'll be interesting to see how they all play out during that. Let's jump into the next 4, shall we? See how we're getting through these. We've got 3 more flights to do. Let's talk about inexpensive whiskey. Inexpensive and young. This is a blended Scotch whiskey, but a very interesting one. This is Glasshouse from Langstane. Now, if we look into this, and you've heard me talking about this at length in the vPub, Ben with Whiskey with Molly was here in a blind tasting I did a charity fundraiser a year ago, November 2021. This came joint first with Springbank 18. It was nuts. We were driving. I'd picked up Ben and a few others in the car. Fraser and a few others attended that night. Sorry if I can't remember everyone, but we all came here, and Ben mentioned that he'd tried this in a blind and said it was very good. And I'm staying quiet, biting my tongue, because I'd already set it up in the blind challenge for that night. This came first along. It's nothing like Springbank 18, but in terms of the popularity of this drink on the night, this came first, joint first, Springbank 18. Including my blind vote, I knew what we were pouring. So, you could say that if you take me out of it, Springbank 18 won it by a point. But if you put mine in, it comes joint first. This is £26. If you spend a bit of time looking into this and realise that it says blended Scotch whisky on there, but it says made from 100% malted barley, it talks about mixing it in a highball. I think you can. It makes a bloody good highball. But I think that it's also a gorgeous sipper. It's 46% ABV. And because it's made from 100% malt, you quickly work out it's Loch Lomond. So this is malt put through their column still and malt from their pot still. £26, 46% ABV. I know that it's a UK-centric product. I hope that it makes it close to you where you are at a fair price, because I think when it comes to a value whiskey, that's a hard proposition to ignore or see past. Helen is saying another Michael Henry masterpiece, lol. Fine in a cocktail, but grand neat too. Helen, I know that you're a fan of it, and I know that you are, and I'm glad you're enjoying it. Peter Wilcox is saying cheers. Fantastic, Peter. Cheers to you too. Thanks very much for participating. And Jimmy Jazz is saying, are you putting the first Advent tonight too? I'm absolutely am. At some point, I'm just going to go into this box and shuffle it, and I'll pour it, and I'll sip it along with the quiz, and I'll even try and do it blind. And you can watch me fail. The more I fail doing blind challenges, the more comfortable everybody else will feel. Then, integrity. I cannot put an advent calendar together without putting the ultimate benchmark in there too. And remember, I'm not trying to sell whiskey, so it's okay for me to hold up something that nobody can buy right now. It's a Springbank 10. It's a wonderful product. The fact that they can get this much flavour, this much interest into a 10-year-old whiskey is mind-boggling. They're just doing it right. They win best distillery from everybody, from the Oswas and everyone's hearts, for a very, very good reason. Springbank 10 is, of course, going to get put into my advent calendar. I was able to pick up a bottle of Springbank 10 to replace this open one recently, as you saw in the vPub, I think, last time around. Then, so that was my integrity pick from this flight of 4. Now I go to the kind of the treat tier, so I'm willing to go for something that's a wee bit more expensive. And if we talk about price, I mentioned last week with this one that it's right on the cusp of what it can reasonably charge. But as I look down on this, and look, we are wood by colour, aren't we? If I look down against the white background of this, let's see if we get a white sheet up here. The colour of this Bòcan is absolutely gorgeous. It's going to be difficult to let you see that properly. Now, in the camera, I think it looks a wee bit like tea, but it's got honey notes, it's got a pink, it's got a red in here too. It's just fantastic. You can see I've taken a decent chunk out of this in the last week or so, and this has grown on me. I'm suddenly quite precious about this whiskey. This is not cheap. I've shown you a 15-year-old already that was about £60 from Glenfarclas, 46%. This is 50% ABV, but it's fully matured in Oloroso, and that's something that costs a premium. It's also quite rare whiskey, and we're paying £95 for it. If this is your style of whiskey, peat and sherry just works. If it's in your lane, maybe this is a Christmas treat. This is going to sell out at £95 if it hasn't already. It's on the upper end of what they can reasonably ask. But let me suggest this to you. If Whiskey Sponge, Chorlton Whiskey, Watt Whiskey, North Star Spirit, any other independent bottler came along with a peat and sherry 15-year-old of this quality, we would queue up to pay £95 for it. That's what I believe. If you look at it through that lens, you taste it, and it's as compelling as what it's been for me, it's going in the advent calendar. I'm really glad to have it. It's a cracker. And finally in this flight, it's an English whiskey. And I think this is the best English whiskey that's going about, and it's available right now. It's not always available all the time, but you can buy it. But I love the stuff. I'm going to pour another wee drop of it. I did pour some of that Lagg. Yes, I did. Is that a clean glass here? This is from White Peak Distillery. Absolutely loved their inaugural. I'm very precious about it because of how little I have left. But this is not their inaugural. This is sub £60 now, so it's come down in price, the small batch. It's slightly higher ABV than it needs to be. Remind me what it is. 46.2, so just a wee bit more. 46.2%, all natural, one of 4,323 bottles. It's quite rare whiskey, but they're starting to get batches now out there now. This is their small batch, a little bit like the Ardna AD series now. They're bringing these out. This is Wireworks from White Peak. Sub £60, English single malt whiskey, 3 to 4 years old maximum. Don't judge it on its age. We're the new whiskies that are coming along right now is starting to teach us to care less about age and focus on flavour. And that's what these guys are able to do. We've got a peat in this, STR casks at play here as well. I think it's a mix of casks. STR and ex-bourbon. Keith Mackenzie's in. Good to have you, Keith. He's saying just sitting on that Bòcan now and enjoying good stuff. And Falsgraf is saying that is why it is my primary source. The Springback 10 there is available, is there and available for €75. Good for you. Fantastic Falsgraf. I'm glad you're able to pick it up. If I pick this out blind, the first thing that hits me is not going to be 3 years old. It's not going to be youthful whiskey. I'm going to taste a lovely spice. That oak thing, the STR thing, is at play here. Some people don't get on well with STR casks. Some people see it as being a cheat. I'm telling you now, we need to preserve our casks. Casks are far too precious a resource for us to dispose of them too early. If we can rejuvenate them in ways, then we need to do that. It's just the way it's going to be. And the flavour that these STR casks bring to whiskey generally is something that I enjoy. I enjoy it in White Peak, I enjoy it in Kilchoman, I've enjoyed it elsewhere, I've tried it too. It's like anything, use it in the right quantity, use it in balance. But Wireworks from White Peaks is a cracking whiskey. Justin Wan is saying he dropped in. I've got to go. We'll catch the rest on replay. Enjoy married life, Justin, and thanks for dropping in tonight and hanging out with us. Can I just mention, if I did forget to say earlier on, that one of our Barflies actually has a birthday today. One of our Belgian Barflies, Carl van Wallingham, has his birthday today. Carl, you might have been in earlier, you might not be in now, you might be picking up on the replay, you might just be hanging out and enjoying whiskey somewhere, buddy. But it's wonderful to have had you around the channel for a hell of a long time. And thanks to one of our Belgian colleagues, our quiz master extraordinaire, for reminding me it was your birthday, my friend. Cheers. Happy birthday, Carl. Two more to go. Value bottling up first. £65 worth of whiskey, sometimes £60, sometimes £58, sometimes 55. That order. That's not cheap, Roy. I didn't say cheap, I said value. This is 15-year-old, fully natural single malt, and you're sick of hearing me talking about it. And yet, look at this wee bottle. Nothing left in it. Loving, loving, loving. Probably the pick of Speyside right now by a country mile. This is the Speyburn 15-year-old, the price point I've mentioned to you. If you are not buying this now at this price and enjoying this, I don't know what else I can recommend to you. It has to be your style of whiskey. It has to be, you know, that kind of, it's getting more and more sherry forward the last couple of batches, but it's thick. It's weighty. There is even a bit of a savoury lick to this as well. I love the stuff. I think it's close to being unique. And if you were to try and get this from another distillery that had some other name on that label, you would have to pay a hell of a lot more. This is not going to be around forever, especially if idiots like me take to the airwaves and talk about it, but it deserves to be talked about. I am not trying to sell this whiskey. I'm trying to connect you with some of the best value you can get right now. Speyburn 15, even if it's the paler batches, that's my preference. I like it even better than these darker batches. It's just great quality liquid. Beautiful stuff. That's my value pick. That can fit in any of the four categories tonight. Value, integrity, special treat, and interesting. It's also a worm tub distillate too. Nora Alex is saying, I don't get along with some STR casks, can be too sickly sweet, sweet toffee. I'm even going off Cotswolds, and I loved it a couple of years ago. That's when I talk about just using it in check. And sometimes if you have too much of something, it does become a wee bit sickly. And sometimes if they use too much of it in the mix for some palates, Nora Alex, you're spot on, it will become too sickly. Next up, and this is integrity. Notice I'm pulling out a non-age statement product for integrity. Like the discussion about the 18-year Deanston versus the 3-year-old Lagg versus that Wireworks that I pulled up a second ago. Let's pull back on this age statement demand. Let's use it as a measure of the investment on the producer's part, by all means. But know that contextually, not all whiskies need that high age statement in order to be good. New distilleries, new whiskies are showing us that it can be fantastic at a young age. And here's one that's been doing it for over a decade. This is the non-age statement release from Longrow, widely held by anyone. If somebody says, name me a good non-age statement product, this is one of the ones that comes right off the top. Longrow peated is the non-age statement, 46% fully natural, other than not having an age statement on it, non-chill filtered and absolutely natural colour. It's usually about £40, but from everything that's from J&A Mitchell alongside the Campbelltown Loch, this is probably the only malt that you'll easily get your hands on. And even then, it's only sporadic. This is just terrific, terrific whiskey. This is my integrity pick because I would put this alongside the 10-year-old from Ledaig, honestly. There is batch variation in this, but it's one of the most consistent products from them. And I would say that I've never had anything other than a damn good bottle from them. The treat whiskey here, this has got to work hard. The whole world is telling me this is amazing. I don't get it. This is a good whiskey. This is a very good whiskey. This is whiskey that is not matching its price point, not by a long way. I'm going to be interested to see how this pick comes in the Advent calendar. It's an Irish single pot still Irish. My favourite style of Irish whiskey. It's gorgeous whiskey as a style. But this 15-year-old from Redbreast, it's a 46%. It's fully natural, I believe. Believe it to be. It did very well in the Oswas, of course, this year. But for me, it's a little bit, it needs just something a wee bit more. It needs a bit more dimension to it. It's poured here. I've put it in with the pile with everything else. Yeah. 15. Is that the previous lot? Glasshouse Springbank 10 and Bòcan 15, of course. That means I didn't pour that sample, did I? I didn't pour the Wireworks. The White Peak. Let's get that sorted. It needs to be in the calendar. Just getting ahead of myself here. Let's try not to spill this as I do it. Steady hand. Only 300 odd people watching, Roy. Don't spill it. Let's get that on nice and tight, and that can join the other ones. And the Redbreast I've already got poured, ready to go in the mix and see how it comes out. Sometimes pour that and it leaves me a wee bit. It's good whiskey. It's just not as good, I think, as everyone's making it out to be often. Lowlander is saying use a funnel. I tried Lowlander. I've used all these funnels tonight. And I find that sometimes you pour a wee bit fast when you use a funnel. There's the piece of paper I just poured that over. Not a drop has been spilled on that wee piece of paper. Keep my notes here. This is an interesting pour. This bottle is actually a gift to me from Stefan Novak. It's a 500ml bottle of Swedish whiskey. This is Dante's pick, which I believe to be a special edition from Smögen. This is a lightly peated type. The cask fill date is spring 2011, and it was bottled in spring 2021. So this is almost a 10-year-old product, or about 10-year-old from Smögen. It doesn't put an age statement on it, but it does give us dates like that, which makes it very interesting. I need a dessert spoon I need a spoon, a knife and fork even maybe to drink this whiskey. This is so thick and dense in my memory. This is one of those whiskies that you literally don't need to pour anything else for the rest of the night. This is going to keep you occupied for the entire evening. Whiskey with Molly's having his comment hidden for saying, can I buy that tea towel off you to suck? Peter is saying you're creating a blending towel. Hopefully it'll leave a nice aroma in the room overnight. So this is peaty, but this is funky, this is earthy, this is aromatic, this is dense, this is heady, this is dank. There's even a bit of fustiness off this. There's something sour in the background. It's a wee bit kind of coastal. Oranges, sour oranges, marmalades. Think some of the really interesting things that you might pick up if you're ever on a distillery visit at Springbank and you get a cage bottle or something, or maybe some of the demijohns that they have there. Think all of those kind of flavors, but cranked up. Very dense, very compact whiskey. Sit with it. A wee bit of water. This is a good ABV on this as well. 57.8% ABV. This will be cask strength. And just such an interesting whiskey. We don't get a lot of Smögen around here. I know you get much more on the continent in Europe, but my goodness, what a terrific, interesting, bold, unique whiskey style it is. Oh, have a wee sip. Even a little bit of balsamic vinegar in there. It's a wee bit acidic. It's one of those whiskies that's just going to change every time. I've got one more flight to share with you. One more. But I need to pour that Smögen, don't I? Right, let's see. Let's have a fresh, clean, white piece of paper. Let's see if I can pour this without getting it everywhere. Smögen. Yep, it is. This is when I'll fail because I'm challenging myself. Just get a wee trickle, keep it steady. Watch for it going. Up. There we go. Not a drop spilled, whereas I was spilling it all over the place when I was trying to use those wee funnels earlier. Smögen, and it goes. I've got still got a dry sheet of paper. Very pleased with myself. But Lowlander, you're right. Most of the time, if you've got a decent funnel, I think that makes a difference. These are all kind of those wee hip flask type funnels that are kind of not very great. What comments am I missing here? Peter Wilcox is saying, Speyburn 15 purchased. Fingers crossed. I have faith in you, Mr. Duff. I'll make a promise with you, Peter Wilcox, right now, here and now. If you get that home, you open it up, you tell me, send me a message, put a comment under the video, whatever it is, say, Roy, didn't like it. If that's the response I get, I'll buy that open bottle from you at full retail price. It's not going out to everyone, by the way. That's how confident I am in this. I am not trying to sell whiskey. I am trying to get you guys to spend less money on quality and less bottles. I'm confident. I am confident. What came second in my blind challenge on my last flight now, then we can just get into the quiz and we can relax after I've talked about all the lofty things that aren't really lofty. There's nothing in this bottle now. It's a bottle killed tonight. In fact, I wasn't even able to properly fill my sample bottle for the advent calendar, which won't give me a clue because if my kids are coming in here and pouring, I won't get to see what the bottle fill was. This came second. Yoichi came first. So the other three in the blind challenge were a Capardonic, 23-year-old, a Vega, 33-year-old, Port Charlotte 10, which came third, but the older malts, the 23-year-old and the 33, came fourth and fifth. First was Japanese non-aged and Yoichi. The second place malt isn't a malt. It's Thompson Brothers 6-year-old blended Scotch whiskey, all natural at 46%. And how much is this? £33.50 thereabouts, £34 a bottle. We're all getting uptight about whiskey and the prices. Now it's crazy, it's crazy, it's crazy. And something like this comes along and says, we've got your back, relax. It's okay. There's a caveat here. It's not available everywhere all of the time. But do you think that Thompson Brothers is going to, on the back of the success of this, is going to bring it out at £50 next time or £40 or something like that? No, this is their £34 bottle of whiskey. This is their entry-level drinker. Everybody relax and enjoy this stuff. Thank you for this. Did brilliantly well in the blind challenge, and it's absolutely earned a place, easily earned a place in the advent calendar. There's an argument that their SRV 5 blended malt should be in there as well, but I've talked enough about that earlier this year. It's going to be interesting to put a blend in the mix and see how that does. Lowlander is saying that Thompson Brothers blend is a belter for the price. I'm glad that you've enjoyed it too. Sub 10. Wild Turkey 101. I've got 2 bottles here. The reason is because it's one of the best bourbons for making bourbon-based cocktails at 50.5% ABV. You're buying it at the same price as me, £23. That's ridiculously good value. There's an argument it should be in here, but if I put that Wild Turkey 101 in this mix, it would stand out. It'd be an easy pick. But honestly, if I was going to put a bourbon in this top 24 thing, Advent pick tonight, Wild Turkey 101 is an no-brain required selection. 50.5% ABV, £23 is on offer. It's usually a bit more expensive than that. I think it's up closer to 30, but even at that price, ridiculously good value. And if you're a Scotch drinker, not quite getting in your bourbon lane yet, Wild Turkey seems to be, according to the Online Scotch Whisky Awards, of course, seems to be the way to do that. I'm not suggesting that you end up down another rabbit hole in bourbon, but it's a nice bourbon to have. If you're going to pick a bourbon, let it be Wild Turkey 101. Thanks for prompting me and reminding me that you're enjoying it. Fernando's absolutely spot on. I have picked out Port Charlotte 10. Why have I picked this out? Well, I think you know there was a vPub on a few weeks back. And I openly admitted that Port Charlotte 10 hadn't really captivated me, hadn't really stolen my heart. I did struggle with it a bit. I pour a dram live on the vPub and it just knocks me out. It's just a fantastic whiskey. Very citrus, full of peat, sometimes ashen, sometimes a wee bit more subdued, depending on what you're drinking alongside, but more importantly, great quality, and in my view, getting better and better all the time. 50% ABV, fully natural, £50 and less. There's nothing to argue with here. Lagavulin 16 was once upon a time the Guardian of Islay, I used to call it. Then, as the price went up and the quality kind of stayed, meh, our Big 10 stepped in and took that place. But now, fighting strong, 50% ABV, fully natural, all declared, no, far less nonsense going on around the kind of image and marketing of this. Although that, Brooklady do like their whimsy from time to time. But we've got here this absolute cracking, solid, just wonderfully reliable product. Glad I've rediscovered it. Glad I'm getting on with it again. Glad I listened to you. Absolutely. And I'm glad I gave it a bit more time. It's in the mix tonight. These are my surprises of 2022, by the way, in case you haven't worked that out yet. Here's another surprise, a shock to me, but such a pleasant shock. We've been through the value one with the Thompson Brothers. We've been through integrity with the Port Charlotte. We're now at the point where we're treating ourselves a little bit, right? We want something nice, something balanced, decadent, something a bit posh, something that feels classy. And I'm shocked that I find it in this bottle. But it's from a distillery that I love, often mistreated and mishandled distillery. But look at this. This is Longmorn's 18-year-old. This is not a standard release from Longmorn. This is part of their Secret Speyside range. When I say theirs, I'm talking about Pernod Ricard's Secret Speyside. So they've got other distilleries such as, I think they've got Capardonic, is it Braes of Glenlivet? I think they've got a release from them as well. But it ends up meaning that this, in my view, this is the best value Longmorn you can buy right now. It's 18 years old. It's 48% ABV from memory, 48% ABV. Non-chill filtered is written on the label. It doesn't mention colour, but I do want to believe that that is natural colour regardless. I was almost going to pour it, but I'm going to pour something else. This is gorgeous, gorgeous whiskey. If you're going to treat yourself and if you're fancying something with a bit of age on it, a bit of maturity about it, you could go a lot worse than buying this. It's terrific. And it's from a producer that I very rarely talk about, let alone recommend on the vPub or anywhere else. It's difficult to find things within the Pernod Ricard stable to recommend and evangelize about. It's great to see Glenlivet bringing out Madeira and the not Untold Stories, the original stories series, Illicit Still and Licensed Dram. It's great to see that bump in presentation, that much more natural product coming along. But generally, Pernod Ricard are pretty poor at that. So to see this coming out from them is super encouraging. Please, more. Keep the price keen. Bring the presentation like this. I think you'll find that suddenly people are screaming about your product a lot more. Peter Lee is saying, I've not tried that Longmorn. Peter, if you like very easy, very decadent, very rich, but super complex, and there's lots of dimension to it as well. This is not a sherry bomb. This is lovely, balanced whiskey that's going on here. This is just one of these almost just perfect examples, right in the sweet spot of Scotch, right in the sweet spot of age, right in the sweet spot of maturation, everything. It's just a great, balanced whiskey. Wonderful stuff. So that brings me to my last of my 24 that's going in the Advent calendar. So let's pop our 3 in here. Got Thompson Blended, Longmorn 18, Port Charlotte 10. In the Advent calendar it goes. And we've got this one here. This is another wee 50cl bottle from a distillery that I don't think I've ever sipped on the vPub. Never owned a bottle of it. I did once have a couple of miniatures of it. Drinks by the Dram, I believe. And it wasn't good. And it was not good. I tried a pour at the Bòcan years ago. Wasn't good. I think it might have been one of the very few drams that I've really not been keen to finish. And yet, along comes Sandy MacDonald to the meeting in Glasgow a couple of weeks ago, and he brings a bottle of this, and he holds it up. He says, "I'm not sure about this, Roy." And I was like, I was quite rude. Sorry, Sandy, I was rude. I said, "Oh, I'm not sure about that either." But I realised he was then gifting it to us. He was leaving it at the tasting. I was like, "Oh, okay. Sorry, fantastic. Let's try it." Because of people's experience with Abhainn, they've never really touched it. Most of this came back with me. I didn't touch it at that tasting. We were spoiled for choice. The table was literally rammed with amazing whiskies that none of us had tried before. So it's difficult to see this wee discreet bottle with this kind of innocuous label on it sitting in the corner. And those of us that do look at it go, "Oh, Abhainn, I wasn't sure." This is cask strength Madeira cask. And I got it home and decided to give it a try. This is my interesting pick, and this is super interesting. I don't doubt that this is benefiting hugely from a rich, good quality Madeira cask to just temper this whiskey a wee bit, because underneath that Madeira blanket, we've got lots of that Abhainn challenging elements coming through. This is definitely, you can imagine, a small batch made product. It literally does taste like farmyard whiskey. That's exactly what it is, and there's just no better way to explain it, but it's jaggy and shouty. There's definitely farmyard about it. There's even some barn. There's a bit of sourness to it. It's a little bit sharp and acidic too. I think sour citrus and tart cooking apple, that kind of fruit note. But then there's something dark, there's something kind of sinister in there as well. Something like maybe more sweat and leather. Something altogether fusty and dank, and let's have a wee try. The arrival and the development is all in check. You're thinking, okay, this is interesting. Towards the end, you get this big burst of chilly heat. There is a youthful spark to it. Then it disappears at the end, and you're left with this Madeira cask toffee caramel sweetness. And immediately you're like, what's just happened? And you want to dive back in for a wee bit more. Never say you don't like. Never say you don't like, because whiskey is there to teach you that you don't know what you like and don't like. And what you don't like today is not necessarily going to be what you don't like tomorrow. The more you can stay open, the more you can say, okay, I'll give it a wee try, the better whiskey will serve you, I believe. Thank you, Sandy MacDonald, and thank you to Abhainn for teaching me that I don't know what I don't like. This could be the most interestingest whiskey that I've put in my Advent calendar today. Very difficult to get a hold of, very small batch. Don't even know what's available from them, and I don't know how much it costs. I didn't look. I should have looked beforehand. But there we are. We've got 23, actually. We've got 23 bottles in there. So Abhainn makes it our 24. This is my whiskey Advent. So now I've got 6 drams poured in front of me here. I might not be able to drink those tonight, but I've poured one from each flight along with you. So what I'm going to do now is make a lot of noise. I'll mute the mic for you. There we go. Hopefully you can hear me and you didn't have to hear all that juggling around there. But MJ Rodden is in saying, bought the Abhainn 10-year-old unchill filtered in Stornoway in April. I've said it before, hands down the weirdest whiskey I've ever had. I think it suffers from poor oak. I think that you are having the same experience, MJ Rodden, that I did previous Abhainn. This cast strength Madeira version is suddenly, it's not for everyone. It's a different whiskey. It's quite intense and there is odd elements to it, but it works very well. And that Madeira cask I have suggested already is doing a decent service. Let's put this, my advent calendar, now that it's finished and ready to go. Let's put it out of the way. And I'll reach in. I'll pick it up blind. I'm not looking. You see, you can maybe see what that is. I'll hold it up for you. Don't know if you can read my scroll. It's just a wee code that's been put in the bottom. And my last bottle, my last glass tonight will be used for me to have my first advent calendar pour. Now, most of the whiskies I've picked, I believe, to be natural colour, so we can use the colour as it's kind of mid to just north of mid colour palette, maybe somewhere in the order of the colour of the Longmorn 18. Let's see what we get in the nose. You shouldn't be thinking that because I'm going to try and smell Longmorn 18, right? A wee bit sour. I've picked a strange one, I think. Strange but good. Happy December, everyone. I think I've picked the Smögen. Very, very dense, very dark. Smögen. I was lucky tonight. Look at that. Smögen. That I picked. Only the Abhainn could have been more standout than the Smögen, I think. I've been very fortunate with that one. Yes, happy December. I'm very pleased. You have witnessed the only blind I'm going to get correct for the rest of December. But I'm dead chuffed about that. Terrific. Whiskey with Molly saying it struggles from integrity. It's a good one, Ben. It is. Fantastic. I'm going to fire up the quiz tonight. Loved Menno's quiz last week, but despite that quiz being pointed at me and the channel and everything, I could still only manage an 8 out of 10. However, tonight, I think an 8 out of 10 for you guys could be a good score to go for. That's just my gut feel. But the 10 out of 10 squad, there's so many of you in that are regularly scoring a 10 out of 10. You might have to work a wee bit harder tonight. That said, it does start out very, very easy in the beginning. So getting to your pass mark should be comfortable. 5 out of 10 is the usual pass mark in the quiz at the end. Remember, it's always fully optional, multiple choice, like it always is. Jimmy Ledaig is saying, yes, Roy, that was embarrassing last week. I'm glad that you were embarrassed for me, buddy. And Whiskey with Molly saying, yes, quiz time, yes, fantastic, good stuff. Good to have the enthusiasm, Ben. I appreciate it. I know that you are a regular high scorer in the quiz as well. 1st of December. Now, remember when I mentioned earlier, there are 5 vPubs in December. Next week, Friendship, then Angus McRailed, then the Community Blind Challenge, then the celebration of 2022. That means that if you are a Patreon supporter, you might want to go in and just make sure you're either comfortable paying for 5, in which case, thank you so much, or potentially you want to cap it and make sure that you pay for just what you're comfortable with, given the current state of things that needs to be part of it. Ellsworth is saying, doing a whiskey advent calendar with a group of the certified original guys. First dram was an excellent 12-year-old Dougie Lang single cask Craigellachie. Happy December indeedy. I like this. Now, of course, let's talk about this. I meant to say it earlier. If we talk about this advent calendar thing, drinking every day, we're talking about a small pour every day. You can keep it and keep up 4 days later, have 4 pours of an evening when it suits you and you don't have anything else on and you're relaxing or whatever. I am not, and nobody should be encouraging daily drinking of whiskey. This Advent thing is a concept, and the idea that you open and you But what you might do is just take it out, put it to the side, and then you've got a wee flight. And if you do it the way I've just done it tonight, you'll end up with a wee blind flight, which could be super interesting. I am in no way encouraging daily drinking. But if it's a wee dram, if it's every day for 24 days in December, what's the harm? My opinion. Anyway, Falscraft is saying, I did pour myself a final flight of whiskies for tonight. The starter is from your calendar. Dingle, non-age statement, then Arran, 10 and Classic Laddie. We'll drink them during the quiz and after. Fantastic. Fantastic. Oh, Sandy McDonald is pointing something out. Glad you're finding Avanjaric interesting. 95 quid for 50 CL. Okay. That's one of these. That makes it a Newberg Geek whiskey, doesn't it, Sandy? It's wonderful to see you in, buddy. I am enjoying it. I'm super glad to have it and very, very generous for you to give it to me. Listen, buddy, if you want to, the next time that we meet up, if you'd like to take that home and spend a bit more time with it, I'd be happy to return it to you. It was generous for you to leave it with us. And I'm very grateful to have had it. Everwind is here. Good to see you, Everwind. Another still life picture from the famous Graham Fraser. I don't know what I'm missing there. Graham Fraser and his photography. Yeah, we can even see him on the BBC weather programme with his photographs now. And Helen is saying 30ml pour shared between the two of us, but may skip a few days and then enjoy it the weekend. Exactly, Helen. It's just been a wee bit healthy about these things. And Jerry Miller is saying we need a 0 emoji. No, we really don't, Jerry. We don't want to have that. Nice to have you in, buddy. Jimmy Legg is saying, no, we don't encourage consuming of whiskey in any way. I know, Jimmy, it is a bit silly, but I have got to be, I remind myself first, I think. Anyway, good luck, everybody. Now, let's get the wheels on the quiz as we're 2 hours in. Thank you for listening to me tonight. Thank you always. I just don't know where it all comes from, but if I'm going to line up 24 whiskies, it takes me a wee while to talk about them, I suppose. Question 1, everybody. Nice and easy to start with. Where are you likely to find a copper dog in a distillery? A, you'll find it in the still house. B, you'll find it in the warehouse. C, you'll find it in the mash house. Where would you find a copper dog? Graham Young is in tonight. Gino Camo is in tonight. Both of these guys know where a copper dog is because we actually saw one in use earlier this week. And in fact, Finton, who came along with us, got to utilize a copper dog earlier this week. Graham Young is saying B, can't slip on that. Absolutely, especially after this week. Absolutely, almost all the Barflies without exception. And Russell Goff is saying in the police kennels you'll find a copper dog. A nice one, Russell. Superb. Looks like a new name, Russell. Welcome in, my friend. But you're spot on. In the warehouse, absolutely. This is a copper pipe with a sealed bottom. It's on a chain and you drop it into the barrel, lie it on its side. It fills up with liquid. You can pull it out again and you can pour it into glass. Or you can seal the top and pop it down your sock and steal the whiskey as they used to do in the old days, which is what it was used for. It was often called a thief. Graham Fraser owns a copper dog. Is it an original one, Graham? Question 2. Earlier this year, what traditional feature did Macallan gain? We're talking about Macallan on the vPub. What's happened? Something odd. But Macallan gained something earlier this year. What was it? It was a traditional feature. A, 7 wooden washbacks. B, an open top mash tun. Or C, a cooperage. What did Macallan gain in 2022 that it didn't have previously? The original Macallan site that closed down in 2018 had a mix of steel and wooden washbacks. The original mash tun was closed. The new mash tun and the new distillery was closed. And as you're absolutely getting absolutely spot on, what they actually gained was a cooperage. Now, this is a cooperage that was originally stationed down at Glenrothes, but they just left a single individual cooper working down there, and the rest of the cooperage was brought up on site at Macallan. So they gained a cooperage. If you answered C, like absolutely the majority of you did, Macallan gained a cooperage in 2022. Question 3. Which of these Highland brands is the fastest growing? Now, this is according to data in the IWSR and based on figures from 2018 to 2020. Which of these Highland brands is the fastest growing? A. Anok, B. Glenfarclas, or C. Dalmore? It's early for an asshat question. I suppose it could be labelled a bit of an asshat question, but not really. Think about it a wee bit. Which of these Highland brands, according to the IWSR, over the years of 2018 to 2020 is the fastest growing? I was quite surprised by this, but I can see that the majority of you are guessing on this one. Now, Highland brands doesn't necessarily mean from the Highlands region. Anok, depending on your perspective, they suggest that they are a Speyside distillery, but they put Highland on the label. Glenfarclas is definitely a Speyside distillery. They put Highland on the label. Dalmore is absolutely Highlands and a Highland brand. And it is also the fastest growing brand. That's incredible to me. 2.5 million bottles per annum. Who's buying it? And it just goes to show that we are a mere sliver because we don't even talk about Dalmore. This is the first time that Dalmore has been mentioned in the vPub in a long time, and the first time that Macallan has been mentioned for completely different reasons. Amazing. They're doing well somewhere. That marketing is a powerful, powerful thing. Question 4. Which of these American bourbon barrels is also an actual distillery? Apologies for not capitalizing American. Which of these American bourbon brands is also an actual distillery? A. Weller, B. Eagle Rare, C. Buffalo Trace. Which of those brands is also the name of a distillery? A. Weller, B. Eagle Rare, or C. Buffalo Trace? Jonathan W. is suggesting that Dalmore is not worth talking about. I have to agree with some of the flattest experiences I've ever enjoyed in distillery whiskey is from Dalmore. And yet I've tasted independents from Dalmore independent bottlings releases, Whiskey Broker, Douglas Lane, and it doesn't taste anything like it. I'm not suggesting they were the best whiskies ever, but I know that the distillery is capable of putting out much better product than what makes it into those plastic stag bottles. And I think it's a wee shame. I think it's a wee shame for Dalmore and a wee shame for whiskey generally, but it's a very, very concocted, contrived, engineered product. Whiskey with Molly saying the 30-year-old Dalmore I had last week was great. Way too expensive, though. Aye, very interesting, Ben. Very interesting. So you're saying that is that the only one? The 30-year-old is the only one that you were intrigued about? Surely they started you off with some earlier ones that may be a bit more affordable. Peter Lay is saying independent Dalmore is superb. This, I'll tell you that what the answer we're looking for is most of you've got absolutely right. Is Buffalo Trace. Weller and Eagle Rare are both Buffalo Trace brands. They're all from the same distillery. Buffalo Trace is the name of the distillery. Question 5 is always the image question, and it is a still life. Well, it's not. It's a landscape shot from Graham Fraser. And of course, I'm just going to ask you what the distillery is. Now, clearly, we've got a very clear image of something in the foreground there. That should give us some guidance until you see the options. Is it A, Clynelish, B, Cardew, or C, Glenkinchie? There are 4 corners to Diageo's new distillery visitor experiences. So they've got the Johnny Walker experience on Princess Street, but then the 4 corners are made up of Clynelish, Cardew, Glenkinchie, and of course Colilla, which has just opened again. Getting lots of positive reports about these visitor experiences, people really loving them. It's obviously cost them a lot of money. I'm looking forward to experiencing it myself. I'll probably enjoy it too. Just wish I could enjoy their whiskey a wee bit more. What I can afford is a bit bland at times, and what I can't afford is what I used to love. Everyone is saying when all the good stuff is sold out and Dalmore is still on the shelf, of course sales will go up. Well, I don't think that's what it is. I think that people genuinely look at that, the presentation and the way it's sold and everything, and people that don't really like the majority of the buying customer base don't really know or look into it. They just buy something, they want reassurance from the brand, and Dalmore gives them that. And it also gives them quite a smooth, easy, approachable experience too, that for us is bland. But often people out there that are drinking malt whiskey, they want that. So it fulfills a very valid, I suppose, part of the market. Anyway, we have A, Clynelish, B, Cardew, C, Glenkinchie. We are, of course, looking at... Oh, most of you got this right. Most of you did. Cardew. Now, depending on if you've visited here, you would know this straight away, but Clynelish also has a bit of a white chimney thing going on. Glenkinchie is a different landscape altogether. Different buildings too. And it looks nothing like Colilla. Clynelish looks a lot like Colilla in terms of architecture, but nothing more. Location, absolutely not. But it is Cardew. So if you answer B, give yourself a point. There we're at the halfway point as we went to question 6. Which of these distillery pairs, for those of you listening in, is in commas, inverted commas. Which of, or quotation marks I should say, which of these distillery pairs are located on the same site? A, Mannockmore and Glenlossie, B, Highland Park and Scapa, or C, Glenkeith and Strathyla? Which of those pairs are on the same site? A, Mannockmore and Glenlossie, B, Highland Park and Scapa, C, Glenkeith and Strathyla? The pacing of the quiz on the vPub at the end tends to be like it is, not because I'm stringing it out or anything. I'm not doing that at all. It's because of the delay. There's a delay for you to hear the question, then you to type in your response, and then that delay for me to see the response, and then for me to respond to it. So that tends to dictate the pace. But I can see all the answers pouring in now, and absolutely everybody guessing it absolutely correctly or knowing it. Rob Halford is in. Good to see you, Rob. I hope you're doing well, buddy. Nice to see you in. Reed Scott, I don't know. Give it a wee guess, Reed. See how you got on. I can tell you that it is, in fact, Mannockmore and Glenlossie. Highland Park and Scapa are pretty much in the same town of Kirkwall, right? But Highland Park is in the town, Scapa's out beyond through fields. I remember a really funny story from Doc, who tried to walk from Kirkwall into Scapa Distillery and ended up trudging through mud and fields and cow shit and all sorts of things to get there. But it's essentially very close, but they're not on the same site. Strathyla and Glenkeith are literally a stone's throw from each other, but there's a river in between. So they're on opposite banks of the river. But Mannockmore and Glenlossie are, in fact, on the exact same site. Question 7. Which producer announced this week that they've switched bottle styles due to glass shortage? Somebody's come out and said, due to glass shortage, we've got this in a different bottle, but don't worry, the liquid is the same. Was that A, Ardna, B, Loch Lomond, or C, Thompson Brothers? Jimmy Legg is saying, Aquavita, do you know where Doc has been lately? No, I don't feel, I feel like he's been unfairly recently. But he's now started a brand new career. And I'm still in contact with him regularly, Jimmy. It just might be that an hour ahead with him being in Germany, that with his new job, his new role, vPub might be a wee bit more challenging from him, at least until he settles into his new role. So, yeah, like I always say, Jimmy, it's not, we don't have to be here, but it'd be nice to know that you're thinking about him. And let's raise a wee glass to Doc and say, I hope the new job's going well, buddy. Cheers. I never hit mute on the microphone, but I've hit it 3 times tonight, and that one was for a week off. I can tell you that the producer that has suggested that glass shortages caused a change of bottle for them is the Thompson brothers. They put a social media share or email share, an email campaign. This is something that I've been talking about in whiskey recently, just resources in general, corks, labels, printing, cardboard packaging, glass, casks, barley, energy, oil, gas, whatever it is. Everything is in short supply right now. The world has never known it like this in modern times. It's incredible. And the whiskey industry is no different from anyone else. But if you see a slightly different bottle out from Thompson Brothers, the liquid is absolutely the same. Ardna has changed their bottle recently. They've gone to, instead of an off-the-shelf etched bottle, they've now gone to a fully molded bottle. We'll see in the times in the months ahead. And Loch Lomond changed their bottle earlier this year. Thompson Brothers, C was the answer. 8. If you were to own a copy of Ingvar Ron's first malt whiskey yearbook, the original release, what year would that be? What year is Ingvar Ron's original release of the yearbook? A, 2006, B, 2007, or C, 2008? So, do we have 17 editions, 16 editions, or 15 editions, if my maths are correct? Was the first edition A, 2006, B, 2007, or C, 2008? Gordon Fraser is saying, I'm panicking now. 2 bananas. I'm still 7 for 7. Terrific. Keep it going. Keep it going. Dogs Have No Uncles is in. Good to see you, Colin. He's admitting that he's following the crowd again. A. James Morgan is saying A, but he's keeping his mouth shut. Anthony Lambert is saying 2006. Newest has been Wishes for Christmas. And the new one's a cracker. Rob Halford is saying the 2006 book is a myth. I know exactly what you're talking about, Rob. So many of us are after it. I'd love to get my hands on a copy of that. Or the 2007, I don't have either. Absolutely, Rob. 2006 is the original. Jimmy Jazz is saying A with the crowd. It's okay for you to use the crowd for the quiz at the end. Of course it is. Question 9, second from last tonight. Which of these new distilleries, again in quotation marks, which of these new distilleries is located furthest south? Oh, should have maybe had a banana skin here, but no. A, Port Ellen. B, Rosebank. C, Lochranza. Which of those 3 distilleries is located furthest south? Orange Will is in, enjoying an 8 out of 8. Good to see you, Roll. It was good to raise a glass with you and hang out with you in Glasgow. Hope it's not the last time, my friend. Kyle Taylor suggesting B for Rosebank. Rick Johnson suggesting A. Gordon Fraser is saying, oh, Sugar Kitty, I love Scotland geography. Good to have you in, Sugar Kitty. BMO is saying B for a guess, too slow. Rob is in saying C, and Malt Minion Chuck is saying C. Andrew Piers is here. Good to see you, Andrew, on a C. Steve Ack is saying C for Lochranza as well. Gordon Fraser is saying what? Stu Baby is saying A. What is Gordon actually going to answer? Has he answered? That noise. What noise? After a quick Google Maps, Anthony Lambert is saying C for Lochranza. I can help you with the Google Maps, buddy. I can tell you the answer is Port Ellen on Islay. Port Ellen on Islay, on the south coast of Islay, is the furthest south. I thought this would be a bit of a banana skin. Here is Rosebank here up in Falkirk on the right-hand side there. Then we have Lochranza on the north of Arran. But on the south of Islay there, we have Port Ellen. Oh dear. You saying oh, is Gordon, okay. I think that might have scuppered a few folk, but Gabriel Welding is still holding on for a 9 out of 9. Fantastic. Philip Wagner is in. Good to see Philip on an 8 out of 9 as a Stewie baby. Gordon Fraser slipped up. He's on an 8 now. Sorry, buddy. Sorry. Who else is on a 9? Haven't managed to unpick before we even get to the ass hat. Peter Lee on an 8. Rob, too slow. Looking forward to the ass hat. Anthony Lambert's saying, no, there goes my perfect game 8 out of 9. Sorry, Anthony, sorry. And Fernando is shocked. But that's why I put the map in there, just to let people see that we forget just how far south Isla actually is. Here comes the ass hat at the end. Gabriel Welding's in good shape. Question 10. The whiskey boom is a global phenomenon. In 2009, Kentucky had 19 operational distilleries. How many does it have today? This is an ass hat, so we'll be answering around the same as the number of A, distilleries owned by Diageo. B, distilleries owned by the Big Four. Let me define the Big Four as Diageo, Pernod Ricard, Grants, and Edrington in this context. Or C, about the same as the number of all the operational malt distilleries in Scotland in 2009. So in 2009, Kentucky had 19 distilleries. It is clearly part of the global whiskey boom, so it is more than 19 today. Am I saying today it roughly matches the distillery count owned by Diageo, malt distilleries in Scotland I'm talking about. Malt distilleries in Scotland owned by the Big Four, Grants, Edrington, Pernod Ricard, and Diageo. Or C, all the operational malt distilleries in Scotland in 2009, back when Kentucky only had 19. Pretty confusing the way I've constructed this, but hopefully it's clear. Hopefully you can work it out. This is why it's an ass hat question. It's there at the end. It's designed to be that ass hat that Jimmy coined all those years ago, probably 3-4 more years ago. I don't know when. Erwin is saying, oh no, I have an empty glass emergency. I'll answer this when I get back. Good strategy, Erwin. Good for you. Who is the Big Four? Savar is saying Diageo. So it's the Big Four in terms of volume, not by distilleries owned or anything, but by volume. So the Big Four is made up of Diageo, Pernod Ricard, and then Macallan because of 15 million litres production per annum, and Grants because of Glenfiddich's 20 plus million litres per annum capacity. Grants, Edrington, Diageo, and Pernod Ricard, I'm including as the Big Four in this context. So was it distilleries just owned by Diageo, distilleries by the Big Four, all the operational malt distilleries in Scotland? You're kind of all over the place tonight. You are all over the place. It's deliberately a perfect ass hat question, I think. But I can tell you that today it's C, the equivalent of all the malt distilleries in Scotland in 2009 when they had 19. They are now at 95 distilleries. Now, is this all bourbon distillation through column still? No, it's all distilleries in Kentucky. But that is a measure in one state in the US, according to the source that I've linked there, which is the Courier Journal. If I'm mindful enough, I'll put the link in the description box underneath when I do the chapter markers tomorrow. 95 distilleries. Quite incredible. Quite incredible. So did Gabriel manage to hang on to his 10 out of 10? Is there anybody else managed a 10 out of 10? Let's jump in and look. I hope that even when there's an ass hat question like that, I always hope that there's a takeaway from it, not just kind of a swear word and a huff, because you might not have got it right. But Rick Johnson's celebrating. Don McCausland is celebrating his 8 out of 10. Absolutely, you should do as well. Juno is on a 7. Andrew Pierce on an 8. Gordon Fraser's raging. Malt Minion Chuck is on an 8 out of 10. Orange Wheel is on an 8 out of 10. Jimmy Legg is saying, wow, no way. 95 distilleries. I could not believe it. If there was any way for me to show you this, I'll put the link in the description box below. It's unbelievable. Dogs Have No Uncles is saying my dumb guess was correct. He's celebrating an 8 out of 10. Kyle Taylor on a 7 out of 10. Great score, Kyle. Nice to welcome you in. I think it might be the first time, Kyle. Bruno Martin's on a 7. Good to have you, Bruno. How's life in Portugal? Nicholas is on a 7 out of 10. Peter Buck's on 8. Rick Johnson, as I might have mentioned, and along with BMO on 7. Stewie Baby on 8. Where is Gabriel? Where is Gabriel Welding? Why can't I see it? It's just jumped. Jimmy Legg is saying, does that include anywhere they can boil a pot? Apparently no. It's licensed distilleries. And Whiskey with Molly is saying, can I do your Christmas quiz? Oh my goodness. How did you get on the last time? How did you get on the last time? I think that might be a good thing to do. Might be a good fun thing to do. Send me a wee direct message, Ben. I've got an idea. Terrific stuff. Where is Gabriel? Where is Gabriel? No, it's a fascinating fact. Does that mean that Gabriel didn't manage his 10 out of 10? Is there nobody with a 10 out of 10 tonight? I did suggest that 8 out of 10 would be a reasonable one. Batter Hordes is saying 95 is mind-boggling, absolutely. We Yanks knew that last one in Kentucky is absolutely blown up. 7 out of 10 says Martin Fielder. Martin, good to have you in, buddy. 9 out of 10, ass-hatted. Gabriel, so sorry. But it was such a mind-blowing fact that I had to include it. And Stu is saying it's the 2nd of December now. You can have another Advent dram. All I need is a clean glass. Okay, what's the one with the least in it? Here we go. There's only a wee drip left in this. But I'll need to give it a wee rinse. Stewie. That was the Lagg. Let's go for it. Let's pick out the 2nd of December. Now, I got the first one right. I guessed my Smögen. I'm going to hold this up so that I can't see what I'm pouring in. There's a much paler whiskey here. So let's not try and second guess it based on colour. Let's just go in. Feeling a bit blocked up. Not confident. And yet, oh, fresh, bright, easy, clean. Sweet, clean, easy. Wee bit youthful. I think this is Glasshouse. Tastes like Glasshouse to me. 2 for 2. This is going to be an easy Advent. Piece of cake. Nothing to talk about. I'm very pleased with myself. I think I'm just going to pull a parachute. On that note, I'm very glad to finish the vPub. Jimmy Legg has bought me a dram, though. Another beautiful vPub. Thanks to everyone. I read more than I listened. Jimmy, that's what it's all about, and I hope that you do. It's part of the fun of this. It's when I go back in and I just watch the chat and scroll it, I mute myself and watch the chat scrolling. Love it. Absolutely love it. Time well spent, says Gordon Fraser. Thank you so much, buddy. It's good to have you in. Benny Fraser saying great vPub and topic. We'll have to recap on the replay too, though. Tough to keep up with the chat. And vPub on the phone. It's very difficult on a mobile device. I know that. Jerry Miller is saying, hooray, Roy. Thank you so much, Jerry. And Roy O'Veer is in. It's Mir, Norwegian Roy. Good to have you in. I got to hang out with Roy a couple of weeks ago in Glasgow. It's wonderful to have you in the vPub as well, Roy. Falscraft is saying, finishing that Dingle single malt, I think I can be poured for rum as well as cognac lovers. Both would not believe that this is whiskey. I think it's a cracking, flavourful malt. Graham Fraser saying, thanks for confirming with tonight's bottles that I am a whiskey hoarder, Roy. We're all hoarders, buddy. We're all hoarders in some way. And Ben is saying, after the St. Patrick's Day quiz, everyone wants me back. And Sandro Fazzolari is saying, you're amazing. 2 out of 2. Thank you, Sandro. It's always amazing to have you in. Brilliant to welcome you tonight. Thanks for the kind words. Rick George is saying, you always make it so much fun. Thanks, Roy. Thank you very much, Rick. And Kerbin, very nice quiz. Thank you, my friend. I look forward to hooking up with you in the future as well after our time in Limburg. Terrific stuff. Let me raise one of these glasses. Let me raise perhaps one of the most interesting whiskies tonight. Let's raise this wee Abhainn. And hold it up and say, thank you. I'm looking forward to spending all of the 5 vPubs in December with you all and with everybody else that's participating too. Thanks for joining me tonight. Next week, we'll be back talking about friendship, and I can't wait for that. And until then, I'll raise a glass, remind you all that you're very dearly loved. Thank you for your support always. Thank you for your support tonight. And I'll see you a week from now. Sláinte mhath.